to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith.
Is that not the start of the slippery slope?
It's very much so.
And the big moral questions of the day.
I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A whole host of truly regal stuff for you today. We're going to be picking through all the royal news and some non-royal news, so I'll just run through it very quickly, shall I? We're going to be talking about the fact that apparently 7 Commonwealth countries are going to ditch the monarchy after King Charles is properly ascended to the throne. How can we make them stay, ladies and gentlemen? That's what I want to know. We're also going to be talking as well about the novel techniques that police are using to crack down on protesters, including apparently facial recognition services. But actually, is that bad for us all? Is this a little bit Big Brother-esque? Some of those non-royal stories for you. We've got the latest on the car sale figures, okay, so we're going to be talking about all of that. Should school uniforms be ditched? There are calls for that to happen. I've got all of that coming your way and much, much more. 3 until 6 p.m. with me, Patrick Christys. Also, did you know that it costs more, a lot more, to send a teenager to prison than it does to Eton? So we're going to be talking about that. GB Views at gbnews.uk. Get them coming in. We are gearing up for the coronation. The crowds are building. I've been out and about chatting to them, and I'm going to continue those conversations a little bit later on in the show. And we'll be talking about all of that stuff and much, much more with a host of fantastic guests. So we're going to be talking about all of that. And yeah, look, make sure that you stay tuned throughout the course of it and get yourselves down here as well. It has been an absolute pleasure to be here at Buckingham Palace. They've allowed the crowds back in now. So yesterday, after the security incident from the previous day, what they'd done is the police had blocked all of this off. But as well, we might, if we're very lucky, be getting a sneak peek at some of the events that are going to be taking place here because they've been doing some dress rehearsals. So there's a speaker system all around here that's been belting out the national anthem, what sounded like choral songs, but that's a bit lost on me, as regular viewers of this show will know. So we might be getting sneak peeks throughout the course of this show. And as well, as we understand it anyway, there's been a little royal drive-by as well. So we've seen things like King Charles and Camilla. So hopefully we have a little bit more of that. But like I've said, it isn't just the royal news that we want to do today. We are going to be talking about, apparently, it costs 6 times more to send a child to prison than it does, or a teenager to prison, than it does to actually send him to Eton, believe it or not, which I think is, you know, quite bonkers, isn't it? What's going on there? There are calls for school uniforms to actually be ditched as well. Do you think that's fair for the kids, or actually would it mean that they turn up to school and let's say maybe their parents haven't got a huge amount of money or something like that? Do they get bullied for the clothes that they're wearing? Are school uniforms actually a good thing? And we're going to be talking about that because that's something that apparently they're thinking of doing in Wales, either ditching school uniforms or ditching school logos completely. And we're going to be talking as well about car sale figures. I don't know if you happen to be in the market for a car at the moment, but certainly I know a lot of people are, and it might be a good time to buy one. But now, not before time, it's your headlines.
Didn't think he'd ever stop talking. Good afternoon. It's 3 minutes past 3, your top stories from the GB newsroom. The Prince and Princess of Wales have been visiting the Dog and Duck pub in central London ahead of the coronation weekend. Large crowds turned up in Soho to catch a glimpse of the royal couple. They've been in the area to hear how the hospitality industry is preparing for the big event. And to get there, well, the pair travelled on the tube, taking the Elizabeth line for the very first time. They chatted away to Transport for London workers about their plans for the busy bank holiday weekend. Meanwhile, a flypast to celebrate the coronation could be cancelled due to poor weather. How very British. The Ministry of Defence has warned it could hamper the ability of pilots to fly safely. Forecasters expect London to be cloudy and wet on Saturday, with rainfall forecast around lunchtime. More than 60 aircraft from the Royal Navy, British Army and Royal Air Force, including the Red Arrows, are scheduled to fly over the Mall and Buckingham Palace at around 2:15. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says Vladimir Putin must be brought to justice for the war in his country. He made the comments during a meeting at The Hague, where the International Criminal Court is based. It comes after Ukraine said it shot down 18 of the 24 drones in an overnight attack. The bombardment followed a strike on the Kremlin, with Moscow accusing Kyiv of trying to assassinate President Putin.
Of course, we all want to see different Vladimir here in The Hague, the one who deserves to be sentenced for these criminal actions right here in the capital of the international law. And I'm sure we will see that happen when we win, and we will win.
2 Palestinian gunmen suspected of shooting dead a British-Israeli woman and her daughters have been killed in an Israeli raid. Maya and Rena D, who were 20 and 15, died when their car was targeted in West Bank last month. Their mother, Lucy D, died in hospital a few days later. Israel says a third militant was also killed during the operation. Voting is well underway in the local elections, with millions of people expected to cast their ballot. Around 8,000 seats across 230 local authorities in England are up for grabs. 4 mayoral elections are also taking place in Bedford, Leicester, Mansfield and Middlesbrough. It's the first time voters are required to show photo ID. Polls close at 10 this evening, with the results announced tomorrow. Travellers from Heathrow Airport are facing disruption and delays as security guards take further industrial action. That's after last-minute talks over a pay dispute failed yesterday. 1,400 Unite Union members have started a 3-day walkout today. It's part of an 8-day programme of strikes throughout the month. Labour and the Lib Dems have called for a robust windfall tax after oil giant Shell reported a profit of £7.66 billion in the first quarter of this year. Shell joined rivals BP in significantly beating expectations. The profits dropped slightly from the previous quarter as energy prices cooled, but it's still making almost £1.4 billion more than expected. A UK regulator has launched a review of artificial intelligence. The report will look at the tools and algorithms used to train computers to process and analyse data. The Competition and Markets Authority is focusing on competitiveness and consumer protection. It aims to ensure the developing technology isn't misleading people nor giving them false information. And 6 green apprenticeships have been selected to mark the King's coronation for their contribution in creating a low-carbon economy. They include low-carbon heating technicians, countryside workers and forest craftspeople. It's hoped they'll encourage more people to work in the green industry. It also aims to ensure the country's workforce is equipped with the skills needed to support the transition to net zero. The government and employers will use the coronation emblem to promote the apprenticeships, selected as the gold standard for green skills training. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now, though, it's back over to Patrick.
Welcome along, everybody. Patrick Christys here at Buckingham Palace for GB News, and I have quite literally been here all week. What is fabulous is that there is a big crowd of GB News viewers who are behind us here, which unfortunately we can't quite see on the camera just yet, but I'll bring them to you. Fantastic atmosphere here at Buckingham Palace as we gear up to the coronation. Hopefully we can see it through and do the King and indeed our country proud. But loads to get through today, so let's get right to it, shall we? And of course we do start with a big story in town. It's a shock poll, though, that shows that almost half of the overseas countries where the King is still the head of state apparently want to become a republic. Do they not know what republics look like? As well as the UK, 14 nations have King Charles as their head of state. But a majority of people in Australia and Canada who were asked said that they would vote to get rid of the monarchy. And the other 4 countries that were in favour of being a republic were Jamaica, the Bahamas, the Solomon Islands, and Antigua and Barbuda. And actually, realistically, I can see all of these flags, just the other side of the camera as well. So these flags are lining the mall as we speak from, 6 of those countries who apparently want to ditch the monarchy. But I'm joined now by Pandora Forsyth, who is the host of the Daily Express Royal Roundup podcast, and she will be joining me throughout the course of this show as well. So, Pandora, yes, I mean, what do you make of this? How do we convince people to stay? That's what I want to know.
Well, we need to go see them more, don't we? But this won't come as a surprise at all. And you have to take polls with a pinch of salt here. They go up and then they go down and then they go up and go down. And this is the type of poll that happens, Platinum Jubilee. We had polls at this time as well. And it won't come as a surprise to the royal family. They're well aware of the public opinion shifting. And, of course, we're in a completely different society to we were 60 years ago with the late Queen. Yeah. So, no, I don't think it comes as a surprise at all.
Yeah, and I just wonder what, seriously, if anything can be done about this to get them to stay, because it's all very well and good people saying, oh, well, all right, if you want to ditch our monarchy, then no, you don't have to have us and all of this. But actually, it would be really nice for people to stay and to be part of the Commonwealth and to enjoy being part of the Commonwealth.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, obviously, there are less senior members of the royal family now who can go out and visit them, so they've obviously got those difficulties in there too. But I think it's all about communication, right? And if we keep the communication going, but I really don't think now is the time in terms of tact and taste to be really talking about this poll.
It just seems to be this big kind of push at the moment, I think, to tear everything down, the established order of things. And all right, I know that there was Brexit and people might be looking at this now and going, oh, you're a hypocrite because you wanted out of the EU. Well, yeah, okay, fine, but I do think when it comes to things like the monarchy and whether or not we should be a republic and whether or not we should have a variety of different institutions in this country, there does seem to be a large push right now to be trying to rip it all down and start again. And then I think a lot of people are going to be quite concerned about what they've actually lost.
Yeah, I don't think they'll realise what they've lost until it's gone right. But there is a rise of anti-monarchists within the country as well, and we do obviously have to reflect that here, all fair and balanced. But actually, in reality of it happening, I don't know if it will happen anytime soon within the next 6 months, for sure.
Absolutely not. Well, look, Pandora is going to be joining me throughout the course of this show, and it's very nice to have some much-needed royal wisdom, isn't it? Adding a little bit of royal glamour to proceedings. But I am also joined now by GB News presenter Calvin Robinson, and Calvin obviously is going to talk to me more about the Commonwealth issue, because Calvin's paternal grandparents are from Jamaica. There is a massive Jamaica flag just waving just the other side of the camera over there. Calvin, look, thank you very, very much. How do we convince people to stay in the Commonwealth?
I don't think we need to. I think people love the Commonwealth. We have to take these polls with a pinch of salt. And actually, if we look at the polls, yes, places like Australia and Canada are flirting with the idea, but look at the Caribbean. The vast majority of the Caribbean nations still favour the Commonwealth. And we see this whenever the poll is put to the people. If you look at Jamaica, where my family is from, the last big poll they had went even further than the Commonwealth and said that Jamaican people would have preferred to have remained part of the British Empire and feel like they would have been better off as a nation if they had done so. So I don't think everyone is flirting with the idea of leaving, but then look at nations that have ditched the monarchy. Look at France, for example. They are obsessed with our coronation. They're obsessed with our royal family and our monarchy because they don't have one. They chop their heads off theirs. You know, they've come to regret it. So I think nations that do leave the monarchical system do come to regret it in time. Look at Barbados as an example. Just recently, they've always been independent, but just recently they became a republic. They did not put it to the people. There was no referendum. There's no public poll. Just politicians in the cabinet decided we are now going to become a republic, and they did so. And I think the people are regretting it. So we've got to be very careful with this, I think, Patrick.
Yeah, look, what do you think this is? Is this the natural conclusion that we're drawing from teaching children in school just all the bad elements of our history and not teaching them any of the good, not being proud of our past and just focusing on the negatives?
We have to take a holistic approach to our history. Nigel Bigger has a great book out on colonialism that actually looks at things, the bad things, but also the good things. You know, it addresses the fact that, yes, we have some issues that we should be concerned about in our history, but we should also look at the fact that we spread Christianity, railroads, hospitals, charities, schools around the world, as well as the English language. We did a lot of good, and a lot of countries remember that good. Even if we are self-denigrating at home and putting ourselves down all the time, people around the world still look at England as, well, the mother of parliaments is one thing, but the mother of democracy, and also the mother of monarchy. They love our royal family. They loved Her Majesty the Queen, and I think they're going to grow to love King Charles too.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously your paternal grandparents are from Jamaica, I believe, Calvin. And, you know, they are one of the countries that are seriously thinking about ditching the monarchy, if you believe the polls, which, I mean, let's be honest with you, the polls are often wrong more times than poor Michael Fish, bless him. But, yeah, what would you say, do you think, to the people of Jamaica who maybe just see the Commonwealth as a one-way street and they're not really getting anything out of it?
I would say let's have a look at what they do get out of it, the relationship that they have with the Commonwealth, and it's one that we need to strengthen further. Now that we've finally left the EU, we can look at the nations that we've worked with and have ties with historically, and nations that we've helped build. There would be no Jamaica, for example, without Great Britain, and that's something that a lot of Jamaicans, I think, are aware of. When my grandparents came over here, they felt like they were coming to the motherland of the Commonwealth. They were very proud to be coming to Great Britain, and they had, you know, plates with Her Majesty's face on the cabinets and that kind of thing. It's a patriotic thing. So countries that are not even countries that are independent now but are still part of the Commonwealth still feel that connection. And I think, yes, there are politicians, mostly on the hard left, that want to sell the idea of becoming entirely independent from the monarchy and the Commonwealth, but I think they are disconnected from the people. The people at the grassroots, generally speaking, know that we're better off united than we are separated.
OK, now, Calvin, look, we are going to be talking quite a bit about this issue because it is quite a startling poll that 6 out of the 14 nations are potentially on the brink of leaving. I am also going to be talking a little bit later on, Calvin, about the security efforts that are taking place here and the mechanisms that the police are using, like facial recognition surgery, that would be something, wouldn't it? Technology. But let's focus on one of the positives, and I want to know what you're most looking forward to about this coronation. Forget about Commonwealth countries looking to leave. Forget about security concerns from those lunatics who decide they want to tear down that house behind me. What are you most looking forward to?
I think this is going to be the biggest celebration of Christianity that we've seen in a long time, other than Her Majesty's funeral, which was the greatest opportunity for mission and evangelism. So just showing the world that we are a Christian nation and that we still have Christian values through this ceremony of the coronation, which is essentially a Christian service, will be fantastic. But also, even looking at this poll, flipping it on the head, you know, the vast majority of the countries, even polled in this poll, still believe in the Commonwealth of Nations. We've got, what, Tuvalu, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, St. Lucia, St. Kitts and Nevis, Papua New Guinea, New Zealand, Grenada, Belize. All of these countries still prefer to be linked to Great Britain and our royal family because they know that that's a strength, especially in the West today. When we look at what's happening in these countries that have republics and have presidential systems as an alternative, it's not that democratic and it's not that traditional. And I think as the West is shifting away from tradition towards what we would probably call woke progressive values, people are looking and saying, actually, is that something I want? No, let's hang on to our traditional Christian values. Let's hang on to our traditional monarchy. Let's hang on to the great British Empire.
Calvin, thank you very much. Calvin Robinson there, who's just joining us, GB News presenter. Make sure you check out his show as well at the weekends. Now, it's been a very special week indeed. One pub in central London just got 2 very special visitors this lunchtime, believe it or not. Yes, I turned up. No, not me. The Prince and Princess of Wales went to the Dog and Duck pub in Soho, which has inspired many a pub football team name. We also have, I believe, some pictures of them on the tube, like normal people. So I think we can maybe show some of those pictures of them now. There they go. Yes, they're on the Elizabeth line, I see there, which is, of course, very, very appropriate. That is indeed Wills and Kate just taking the tube, grounding themselves, earthing themselves in normal reality. There we go. Okay, all right. Well, look. And I believe there is some footage of them at the pub as well, is there? Is that right? Down the Dog and Duck, are they? Oh, there he is. He's pulling a pint. So, yes, again, fantastic. That takes me back. I've crawled out of that pub several times in my life, but there we are. Back at the old Doom Bar. Lovely stuff. Nice drop, that. Anyway, there we go. And that's him meeting the crowd, which, of course, he couldn't have done if he'd continued to stay at the pub and drink like I used to. So that is Kate and Wills there doing normal people stuff ahead of the coronation. Right, OK, so, look, people will be allowed to hold up banners that say, "Not my king," on the Mall on Saturday. I was out and about earlier on, chatting to some people, and it's fair to say that if they go anywhere near Dorothy's tent, they're going to get a walking stick to the back of their head. But we're about to discuss that. A little earlier on, I did go and ask some of the people what they thought of all of that prospect of these protesters and their banners.
I do have an issue with the fact that people like us camped out here for 4 nights, 5 days, and some protesters are going to try to ruin our day. I cannot cope with that.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "No, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching. Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway, Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Saturday nights on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
Saturday nights on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Yes, welcome back, everybody. Patrick Christys here at Buckingham Palace, and they've allowed the crowds to gather there back outside the palace now, so it's all starting to wind up a little bit, and we've got rows of tents along the Mall, but also as well, I'm hoping that we might be able to just show you some pictures of what's been going on the behind me on the tent here. There's a GB News' tent is drawing a little bit of a crowd. I'm just going to try and shout to them. Can we get a little wave? Is that all right? Yes, hello. Hey, there we go. Fantastic. All right, lovely stuff. So yes, we're very much out and about here, people. I must say, I am absolutely loving this. This is great. It's made me feel like a rock star. But anyway, back to matters more serious, people, apart from my ego, of course. Anyway, King Charles could see protesters holding up signs that read, "Not my king." It won't be any of them, I can guarantee you that. Along the route of the royal procession on Saturday, anti-monarchists demonstrated when Charles was in York last month, and police say that they will not arrest people holding up placards this weekend, as long as they stay the right side of the law. So they're not going to remove the banners, they're not going to take those signs off, and I get that because, you know, look, we do live in a free society, don't we? I suppose the bigger question is it in poor taste? But I've been asking people right here at Buckingham Palace what they make of these potential protesters and the police's response to them.
Protesters have a right to protest. I have no issue with that. I do have an issue with the fact that people like us camped out here for 4 nights, 5 days, and some protesters are going to try to ruin our day. I cannot cope with that.
I think people have the right to protest. I just wish the media had more sense, and instead of giving them all the publicity, filming them, ignore them and come to the rest of us.
They are entitled to say what they want, but if they disrupt things, and perhaps I'd heard that they might use rape alarms to frighten the horses. Now, if they do that, there is going to be a nasty accident, I think, because any well-trained horse is going to be freaked out by that and possibly hurt, or people hurt as well.
I would step back and let them get on with it, because hopefully they'll be arrested and removed, because this is a joyous time. And if they don't want to be here, don't be here. Don't spoil it for others.
OK, there we go. So I'm joined now by James Woodhousen, who is a visiting professor at South Bank University and a man who has in the past said on GB News that we should abolish the monarchy. Look, it's good to chat to you again. Will you be protesting with banners that say "Not my king"?
Certainly not. The reason is, Patrick, you're my favourite monarchist. The reason is that not my king, not my Charles is a kind of narcissistic sort of "I'm better than you" kind of reaction. It doesn't make a case for abolishing the monarchy. It just says, I'm not part of this, you know, I'm a better person. I don't agree with that. I think it's inward looking, and it doesn't convince people of the Republican case. I won't be there holding that banner, certainly.
No, and part of me just wonders, what does that achieve? Because it's a really fine line here. I woke up this morning and I initially read the headline, "Oh, police aren't going to take their banners off them." And I thought, oh no, come on guys, go in there and get rid of them. And I thought, well, I don't really want to live in a country like that, because just because I don't agree with this cause, I don't really want to live in what people could very easily argue becomes a fascist state very quickly. But then I thought, I don't think I need to argue that, because I would say, why do these people, on what is a happy day, really, feel the need to go and do that? It's going to achieve nothing, James, isn't it?
Well, I think you're right with that slogan. You know, I'd much rather that they published a reasonable pamphlet with carefully organised arguments and there are plenty of them, Patrick, to abolish the monarchy, then just show up. They will spoil some people's day. Well, disruption and protest can do that, and we have to, get along with that. But I think it's just me on their part. And the tough stuff of winning the argument is something that what is called the left today just doesn't want to engage in. It's all positioning yourself, identity politics, the right side of history, and all of that business.
Yeah, no, indeed. And in a way, they are winning. And I'm saying this with my eyes wide open, as one of those lovely ladies that I was vox-popping earlier on said there, which is that, well, maybe we shouldn't really be talking about this. But the fact is, I can see it coming a mile off, and I'm sure many people can, which is that something possibly will kick off big time at the coronation on Saturday. And we'd all seen it coming, and then we didn't mention it. So I do want to talk about it all, James. But can I ask a little something anecdotal from you? So you're a visiting professor at South Bank University, and all too often when we see the polling data that's been done, it's younger people, the under 25s, who are desperate to abolish the monarchy as a whole, or change our national anthem, or essentially rip down every core historic institution that this country seems to have. Why is that?
Well, because the left and academia is scared of the future, disgusted with the past, just wants to live in the present and show off. And they imagine that just to wave these banners is to show that they're, doing the right thing and so on. It just doesn't hack it. It doesn't persuade people. In fact, if anything, it angers people because there's no argument behind it. And, this idea in universities and elsewhere that, young people are always right, that they represent the future, a brilliant insight by Tony Blair some years ago, just doesn't cut it with the mass of the population. It's easy to indulge the youth. That's what Hollywood does all the time. That's what Joe Biden is doing with his points on transsexuals and so on. But the rationality has to triumph against self-expression for its own sake and indulging young people. They won't learn that way. They have to learn proper arguments against the monarchy, not just posturing.
Yeah, look, James, thank you very much. And I must say, I never thought I would spend so much time agreeing with a man who wants to abolish the monarchy. But there you go. I'll have to chat to you again very soon, mate. That's James Woodhousen, visiting professor at South Bank University. I'm just going to bring you in very quickly, Pandora, if that's all right. So Pandora Forsyth is going to be with me throughout the course of the show, of course. What do you make of people who are going to go out of their way to hold up these signs that say "Not My King"? Because everyone I talk to there just goes, look, can't you let us have this day? Why do you have to turn up, you little twerps?
Yeah, I think there's always a freedom of speech argument. Yeah. Do it with a bit of dignity, I would hope. And then, of course, there are, better days to do this, but they want the most publicity possible, don't they? Yeah. Which is why they're doing it on that day, and lots of media outlets will cover it because they want to be fair and balanced.
Exactly. So with that said, I have obviously nodded to this now, and the way that I'm going to then talk about this discussion in the next hour is going to be about this. And I think this is something that's quite concerning for people, which is that the police, as part of their bid to clamp down on this, and indeed all other things, so terrorist activity as well, and just the usual types, they're going to be using facial recognition devices. And as far as I can gather, that means that essentially everyone who turns up here is going to have their face recorded and registered and see what that means. So there have been some quite, funny if you look at it this way, incidents that took place during some trials of this facial recognition devices that include link to poor man in Milton Keynes to a murder that he'd never committed. And so I do wonder whether or not we are now living in some kind of Big Brother-esque state. Is that the price you pay to have safety, or actually is that a bridge too far? So we've got a lot to discuss about all of that, but I've got loads more still to come between now and 4 p.m. It's going to be a live wire hour, and we've done a lot of the royal news now. We've done a lot of the royal news, but there's good news for the economy today. Yes, that's right, with a big rise in new car sales. So I'll be talking to you all about that. And if you enjoyed seeing me get out and about on the Mall yesterday, guess what? I'm going to do it again. What could possibly go wrong? Yes, another instalment of what my wonderful producers have decided to call Patrick's People, and that's on the way. But first, it is indeed your latest news headlines. I will also, by the way, be telling you why it costs more, lots more, to send a child to prison than it does to send them to Eton. I know. News now with Polly Middlehurst.
Patrick, thank you. The headlines this hour. The Prince and Princess of Wales have been visiting the Dog and Duck pub in central London ahead of the coronation weekend. Large crowds turned up in Soho to catch a glimpse of the royal couple. They've been in the area to hear how the hospitality industry is preparing for the big event. And to get there, the pair also travelled on the tube, taking the Elizabeth line for the very first time. Meanwhile, a fly past to celebrate the coronation may be cancelled due to bad weather. The Ministry of Defence has warned it could hamper the ability of pilots to fly safely. Forecasters expect London to be cloudy and wet on Saturday, with rainfall forecast around lunchtime. More than 60 aircraft from the Royal Navy, British Army and Royal Air Force, including the Red Arrows, are scheduled to fly over the Mall and Buckingham Palace at around 2:15. In other news today, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says Vladimir Putin must be brought to justice for the war in his country. He made the comments during a meeting at The Hague, where the International Criminal Court is based. It comes after Ukraine said it shot down 18 of 24 drones in an overnight attack, which had followed a strike on the Kremlin, with Moscow accusing Kyiv of trying to assassinate Putin. Donald Trump is cutting short his trip to Ireland, saying he's going back to New York to confront his accuser in a civil rape case. The former US president, who's been visiting his golf courses in Scotland and Ireland, has described the case as a political attack, and he says he'll probably attend the hearing. He's been accused of rape by a former magazine columnist in 1996, a charge he denies. And voting's well underway in the local elections in England, with millions of people expected to cast their ballot. Around 8,000 seats across 230 local authorities are up for grabs. 4 mayoral elections are also taking place in Bedford, Leicester, Mansfield and Middlesbrough. Polls close at 10 o'clock this evening. Full results announced tomorrow, right here, GB News. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and on the TuneIn app. This is GB News.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
So, a quick snapshot of today's markets for you. The pound buying you $1.2563 and 1.1414 euros. The price of gold is £1,628 and 70 pence an ounce. And the FTSE 100 is currently standing at 7,725 points.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Yes, wonderful stuff. The sun has just come out for us here at the Palace. You absolutely love to see it. But in some non-royal news, car sales in the UK are full speed ahead, with apparently loads of people now deciding to get on the market for their motors, with the Society of Motor Manufacturers reporting an 11.6% rise in new car registrations in April, with numbers up for the 9th month in a row. I am very pleased now to be joined by our economics and business editor, Liam Halligan, with On the Money. Yes, Liam, OK, so this is good news. Take it away.
It is indeed, Patrick. We've had lots of signs that the economy seems to be turning a corner, not least car sales. After buying a house, if you're lucky enough to be able to buy a house, of course, the biggest purchase households make is a car, and car sales are up, as you say, in successive months. Let's have a look at some of the numbers. These are from the Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders. They come out each month. 132,990 new cars were registered in April. That's up 11.6% on April 2022. But, Patrick, it's still 17% lower than 2019 before the pandemic. So car sales are still around a fifth down on the pandemic. And then if we drill down into the kind of cars that people are buying, still 42.8% of new cars bought in April. They were petrol cars, so over 2/5 of cars. Diesel down below 5%, 4.4% of cars now. New cars that are bought are straight diesel cars, less than 1 in 20. Then we've got those mild hybrid electric vehicles, MHEVs. These are hybrids that charge themselves, so you don't plug them in. You have a battery and a combustion engine, and the engine charges the battery, and you alternate between the two. They're 18.5%, almost 1 in 5. And pure battery electric vehicles, they're 15.4%, Patrick. I tell you what's interesting to me, though. That is that the Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders, incredibly knowledgeable body, they've been around literally for decades monitoring the UK car industry. They are now reporting that customers may be getting less willing to buy those pure battery electric vehicles. Why? Because of the difficulties charging them. Even if there is a charging station, there are often other cars in the way, so they get what we call range anxiety. And also, Patrick, when your electricity bill at home is sky high, it may not be actually that much cheaper to run an electric vehicle than to fill up with petrol and diesel at the pumps. Here is Emma Butcher of the SMMT.
What we are seeing is concern over those broader economic challenges that we're seeing, the cost of living crisis, the rising cost of energy. That all has an impact on what you might decide to buy next. And equally, the huge obstacle that we face is a real paucity of charging infrastructure. So that's really putting a lot of buyers off making that leap into an electric car.
There you go, Patrick. A real paucity of charging infrastructure. That's pretty strong words from the SMMT, an organisation that has many links to the government, needs to keep ministers on board. I don't know about you, but I hear in my life a lot of people I know who have bought electric vehicles, those pure battery vehicles, are saying, well, you know, we couldn't really run down to the West Country because we were worried about when we were going to be able to charge. We had to take the train instead. Now, some people will cheer that, but I do think electric vehicles have got quite a long way to go. If we are going to be relying on them, that we need more charging infrastructure. And that's why we're having trouble in this country building those battery plants, those gigafactories, because a lot of investors are not entirely convinced that electric vehicles are really going to catch on to the extent that ministers want them to.
Liam, thank you very much. Liam Halligan there, our economics and business editor with On the Money. Will you be planning on getting a new car anytime soon? Are you wondering about whether or not you should be getting the hybrid version, the purely battery-powered version? I think he's absolutely bang on the money there, saying that people do have range anxiety with those things. Look, I like it at the moment. When I get in my car, at least I know I'm going to get to where I want to go to. And I don't think I would have that confidence when it comes to electric vehicles. And I don't fancy my lucky bill going up any more than it already is either. But moving on. Prison for kids, that's right. Prison for kids might be pricier than we all thought, all of us. I know we were all thinking about it all the time, weren't we? According to official figures, sending children to jail costs 6 times more per year than attending the UK's best-known public school, Eton College. So, cop a load of this, all right? The cost of a place at Cookham Wood, which is a young offenders institution in Kent, for older teenagers, costs the taxpayer £275,000 per year. But even with such a hefty price tag, a recent inspection found solitary confinement had become normalised and that education and other interventions were almost never delivered. Eton, on the other hand, is apparently a snip at around £46,000 a year. So there we go. I don't know why we don't all send our kids to Eton. With me now to share her thoughts is Vanessa Frake, who's a retired prison governor and an author as well. Vanessa, thank you very much. Look, great to have you on the show. Why on earth is prison for kids so expensive?
Well, this question, Patrick, comes around sort of once every 12 to 24 months. I think, you know, we have to realise we're not actually comparing like for like here. With Eton College, one would hope that, you know, those children that go to Eton want to learn, want to conform, want to engage in the education. With a Young Offenders Institute, these are young adults that have been sent there by the courts for a punishment, and that is what prison is. It's a taking away of liberty. So they don't want to be there. They don't want to engage in the education side of things. So it does require more staff per prisoner. And of course, staff is your greatest asset, and they are the most expensive. And I think with regards to the solitary confinement, I think, you know, I've read the report on Cookham Wood, and I think the prison service has put in a lot of procedures and a new governor in place to try and address the solitary confinement. But it does kind of make me wonder when people say, you know, children, we're sending children to prison. These are young adults. These are between 17 and 21. So, you know, they're not like, you know, we're not getting out the Connect 4 to play a game here.
No, look, absolutely. Vanessa, I suppose I've got to ask the question. What is the chance of rehabilitation if you are between 18 and 21 and you find yourself in somewhere like Cookham at the cost of the taxpayer of 275 grand a year in solitary confinement? Is there an argument to say we would be better sending those kids to Eton or young adults?
Yeah, well, I suppose there is a possibility that they do better at Eton. There is also a possibility that they wouldn't. But unfortunately, the courts these days don't send young adults to Eton College, and I'm not sure that Eton College would be over thrilled at that prospect. You know, these are troubled teenagers. They are at a particular hormonal age. And of course, a prison mirrors society. And we unfortunately read every other day there's a stabbing, there's a serious injury, or there's a murder of some young person. And that is reflected in prisons, local prisons like Cookham Wood.
Okay.
I noticed, you know, they've had a lot of weapons fines that prisoners don't feel safe. Well, that is part of the prison's job is to protect those prisoners. Whilst protecting society and keeping them in prison.
Vanessa, thank you very much for your time. That's Vanessa Freight there, retired prison governor and author, just reacting to that quite startling news that it costs around 275 grand a year to put someone in a young offenders unit. And yes, that is around 6 times as much as it does cost to send them to Eton. Now, there's a great atmosphere here at Buckingham Palace, ladies and gents. Let me tell you that much. You can see some of the crowd behind me and some of the buzz behind me here, and I want to get out and about with the fans who are celebrating a historic event. So in a few minutes, I'm going to go and speak to some of the royal superfans, and I think we can all agree that absolutely nothing could go wrong there. I'm Patrick, Christys on GB News. We are Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop
failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories. Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Yes, hello everybody. Now this is very much my favourite bit of the show. I am out on the Mall and we can see as well the crowds are building. There's people passing along there. Now earlier on, out of these speakers here, they were playing the national anthem and they're getting ready for a little bit of a dry rehearsal. Every now and again you'll hear the whistles go, police cars driving past, and occasionally a member of the royal family whips along behind them in their big royal car. But I want to talk to some of the people who've come to camp out, and I've got a feeling that these two here are very special indeed. So, hello, how are you? What's your name?
Yeah, I'm Julie, Robert Blythe.
And your name is?
I'm Robert, yeah.
Robert. Now, first and foremost, so you're together, are you?
We are. Have been for 37 years yesterday.
Yes. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I know everybody watching this and listening to this will want to wish them a very happy wedding anniversary for yesterday.
Yeah.
And you commemorated your, how many, 37 years?
37.
In a tent last night on the Mall. I tell you what, I suppose when he said he was going to take you to Buckingham Palace, I mean, you must have been happy about that.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Like I say, it's first night of camping in 37 years, but yeah, it was it's okay.
It was okay. Okay. Well,
it was worth making the trip. So
it was worth making the trip. Now, sir, I can see that you've obviously got a fabulous uniform on here. So why does the coronation mean so much to you?
Obviously, I'm a veteran of the 2nd Royal Tank Regiment. Here we have the Royal Tank Regiment flag facing that way. But obviously, you know, King Charles III is the Commander-in-Chief of the British Armed Forces and also the Commander-in-Chief of the Royal Tank Regiment. So, yeah, got to be here for the coronation.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a veteran, it really does mean a lot to you because presumably you will have fought for his mum, really, at one point.
Well, yes, exactly. Obviously, Queen Elizabeth, when she was alive, I was in the army. 70s and 80s, obviously Queen Elizabeth II was the Commander-in-Chief then, so yeah, best boss I ever had.
Oh, well, lovely. That's a really nice thing. And I've just got to ask you before I leave you in peace, next year, where are you going to make him take you for your wedding anniversary?
Well, he took me to the Tower Hotel for London Marathon, so hopefully he might take me back there.
Oh, there you go. Right, well, you better get saving, mate. You better get saving, okay. And get running as well. Now, we're going to head on down this way because there's another very special individual here, and I'm going to try and not step on his oil paintings. Let's come around the other side of him, I think, if we can, and we'll get a better shot. Hello, my good man. How are you? Yes. Now, what's your name? I was going to ask what you're doing, but it's pretty obvious, isn't it? But let's get this in. Go on, what's your name?
Charles Minty.
Charles Minty. That name rings a bell. Were you, by any chance, named after the king?
I was born the day that Charles got married to Diana, 29th of July, 1981. So my father felt, no, he couldn't really call me anything except Charles, so hence why I'm called Charles.
Fantastic. I mean, it is obviously a stellar name, a royal name. Right, well, what's going on here?
Well, I'm trying to capture the scene. It's a nice day, and the flags are flying, and there's loads of people, and the people in tents, obviously. So there's going to be a bit of tents. There's going to be, you see the flags taking shape. Hopefully the weather might hold a bit longer, because I haven't finished, but yeah, I've got a lot to do. As you can see, it's barely started, really.
Well, no, but I like to see the fact that you've immortalised the GB News broadcast tent there, which is fabulous. Well, money, I imagine, and lots of it. But how long do you think this is all going to take for you?
Well, I might speed up a bit, and because it's going to get dark. Maybe. What time is sunset?
Well, I don't know, but it's normally when my show finishes. But I'm going to say around 7 p.m, 7:30.
So it's got to be finished by then. So come back in a few hours.
Well, I tell you what, I'm going to come back the next hour if that's all right. But thank you very much and keep up the good work. And it's been fantastic to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Now, okay, we're just going to keep going a little bit. I think. Why not? I mean, quite literally anything. Oh no, I'm getting told to turn around, and I can see why. I can see why. Who am I talking to? Hello. What's your name?
Olivia.
Olivia. And are you here for the coronation?
Yeah.
And what are you most looking forward to, do you think, Olivia?
Seeing King Charles.
Seeing King Charles. Is there anything you'd like to say to King Charles? Maybe good luck, good luck?
We come from Zambia.
Oh, you've come all the way from Zambia? Is that right? Goodness me, how long did it take you to get here?
It's
a 10-hour flight. It's a 10-hour flight. You've got an interpreter here, I can see.
4 hours to get to Nairobi, so 14 hours.
14 hours, and was it worth it?
Yes.
And what do you make of being here at Buckingham Palace and on the Mall?
Colourful, sweetheart.
Enjoyable and colourful.
Oh, lovely. Well, talking of people who are enjoyable and colourful, I can't help but notice that you've got a crown on. Yes, there we go. Hello, what's your name?
Susan.
Susan, fantastic. And where do you get the crown from?
From Windsor Castle, just outside.
So that is a proper royal crown from the royal borough.
Yeah, it's from the Royal Borough. It's just in one of the little shops outside the castle.
Oh, absolutely magnificent. Yeah. Okay, so are you here for you camping out? What are you doing?
We came up to have a look around to see where we might stand on Saturday for the actual coronation.
You're going to be scouting it out. Now, I've got to break it to you. We're going to be doing
Any ideas where we should go?
Well, I think you're probably in the right spot here, but I've got to break it to you because, as far as we're aware, we're getting a special weather report later, but this lovely sunny weather that we've got now might break, and we might end up with a little bit of rain. Is that going to put you off?
No, it won't. No. We'll be prepared.
Oh, good. Okay, all right. Well, look, I'm just going to see if I can just keep walking down a little bit here, I think. Thank you very much. And there is, of course, another lady here, fabulous lady, who people might remember from yesterday. She's also got a crown on, and she's getting her picture taken at the minute. She's famous, I think. Can I say a quick hello to you?
Hi.
Is that all right? Now, now earlier on, I actually had a quick look around some of the tents here, didn't I? So our viewers may recognise that. But how are you? How are you finding it?
Yeah, I'm really good, thank you. Yeah, enjoying the camaraderie.
Can I just say, you look remarkably fresh for a lady who's been camping out all night.
I know, well, I've got lots of things with me, so I'm able to keep fresh.
And you're not regretting it? How was it last night out here?
It got really chilly, but I've got plenty of clothing and ended up having to sleep in my coat inside my sleeping bag, but it was okay.
Inside your sleeping bag? Okay, all right, well, there we go. Well, now, can I just ask you a little favour? Is that all right? Because I think I'm going to have to throw it to the end of the hour in just a second. But when I sign off, is there any chance I might be able to pinch your crown? Thank you very much. Here we go. Okay, well, look, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're having as much fun as I am out here on the Mall. I'm going to be with you for the next couple of hours. It's Patrick Christys at GBNews. I've got loads coming your way throughout the course of the rest of this show. And yes, all right, well, I will see you all in a tick. I better get back to the studio, hadn't I? Oh no, sorry everybody, I thought I got the signal to go. Well, there we go. Anything can happen when you're out and about in the wild. There we are. So look, let's keep wandering down, shall we? So like I was saying before, we had a load of these speakers out earlier on, and you can see that they're going to be playing out a little bit of a dress rehearsal. So hopefully a little bit later on in the show, when I'm camped up there from my my GB News station there, we're going to be hearing some fanfares coming out and a practice thing of the choirs and the coronation, etc. So that will be all really rather nice, I think, won't it? And if we keep walking this way as well, the crowds are all coming and funneling through this way here. They're kind of getting shouted at rather a lot. I've got a couple of people here as well, though. Sir, hello. I believe you've come all the way from Bolton, is that right?
Well, you're in for right, you don't you?
Okay, what was that?
Yeah, go on.
So how are you finding it here?
Oh, it's great. It's great. Yeah.
Yeah, you enjoying it?
Is this live?
It is. Yeah, don't swear. Move on. Like I said, anything can actually happen here at the Mall. I mean, I'm amazed that hasn't happened before, to be perfectly honest with you. But look, there we go. Well, make sure that you stay with me here, because I'm going to be covering the whole royal brief for you. We're going to be talking about whether or not the protesters are going to turn up, and if the police are doing enough work on them to try and clamp down on them. We're also, of course, going to be talking about the fact that, as you can see, the Commonwealth flags around here. 7 Commonwealth nations, or 6, I think it is, are planning on leaving once King Charles properly ascends to the throne. But there we go. Patrick Christys here on GB News. I'll see you in a little bit.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners on TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope? It's very much so. And the big moral questions of the day. I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome to Buckingham Palace, ladies and gentlemen. I've just about made it back from what was a rather, chaotic event there out on the Mall, but you love to see it as the atmosphere builds up. We are just 2 days to go now until the first coronation for 70 years, and GB News is the place for the best coverage of the day. So there we go. Make sure you stay locked into us. I will have loads today. We are doing a bit of royal news. We are, of course, not doing. We are doing some other news that isn't royal as well. So we're going to be talking about the fact that William and Kate were out and about. We're also going to be talking as well about the fact that they've been on the tube and in a variety of different pubs as well, apparently. And the heir to the throne continued its preparations on Saturday by going, yes, like I said, to the pub and find out what happened when William and Kate went to a boozer in central London, and you can see them there pulling a couple of pints and no doubt not staggering out of it in the way that I used to as well. But loads more coming your way. Patrick Christys here on GB News. Ladies and gentlemen, so I'm going to be talking about the fact that apparently 6 Commonwealth countries now want to leave the Commonwealth and ditch the monarchy once King Charles ascends to the throne. I'm also going to be talking about whether or not police are going to be too heavy-handed or not heavy-handed enough with the protesters. Supposedly Republican groups are on their way to get their particular patches set up in advance of the coronation. Police are going to be using facial recognition technology in order to keep tabs on them. But that means they're going to be using that technology on us. And I'm going to be discussing whether or not it is actually a little bit like a Big Brother state. In other non-royal news, though, we've got the fact that it's going to cost more to send people to a young offenders unit than it is to send them to Eton, believe it or not. I'm going to be talking as well about whether or not we should be banning school uniforms, because there are calls for school uniforms to be banned. I've got all that coming your way and much more. Get your views coming in, gbviews at gbnews.uk. And yes, if you're in the area, don't be shy, pop along and we'll try and get you on the telly. But now it's headlines with Polly.
Patrick, thank you. Good afternoon to you. Our top story on GB News today. The Prince and Princess of Wales have been visiting the Dog and Duck pub in central London ahead of Coronation weekend. Large crowds turned up in Soho to catch a glimpse of the royal couple. They've been in the area to hear how the hospitality industry is preparing for the big event. And to get there, the pair travelled on the tube, taking the Elizabeth line for the very first time. They chatted away to Transport for London workers about their plans for the busy bank holiday weekend. Meanwhile, a fly-past to celebrate the coronation could be cancelled due to forecast bad weather. The Ministry of Defence has warned it could hamper the ability of pilots to fly safety. Forecasters expect London to be cloudy and wet on Saturday, with rainfall forecast around lunchtime. More than 60 aircraft from the Royal Navy, the British Army and the Royal Air Force, including the Red Arrows, are scheduled to fly over the Mall and Buckingham Palace at around 2:15. International news, and Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says Vladimir Putin must be brought to justice for the war in his country. He made the comments during a meeting at The Hague, where the International Criminal Court is based. It comes after Ukraine said it shot down 18 of 24 drones in an overnight attack. The bombardment followed a strike on the Kremlin, with Moscow having accused Kyiv of trying to assassinate President Putin.
Of course, we all want to see different Vladimir here in The Hague, the one who deserves to be sentenced for these criminal actions right here in the capital of the international law. And I'm sure we will see that happen when we win, and we will win.
Volodymyr Zelensky. Now, Donald Trump is cutting short his trip to Ireland, saying he's going back to New York to confront his accuser in a civil rape case. The former US president has been visiting golf courses and has described the case as a political attack. He says he'll probably attend the hearing. He's been accused of raping a former magazine columnist in 1996, a charge he denies. Two Palestinian gunmen suspecting of shooting dead a British-Israeli woman and her daughters have been killed in an Israeli raid. Maya and Rina D, who were 20 and 15 years old, died when their car was targeted in the West Bank last month. Their mother, Lucy D, died in hospital a few days later. Israel says a third militant was also killed during the operation. Now here, voting is well underway in local elections, with millions of people expected to cast their ballot. Around 8,000 seats across 230 local authorities in England are up for grabs. 4 mayoral elections are taking place in Bedford, Leicester, Mansfield and Middlesbrough. It's the very first time voters are required to show photo ID. Polls close at 10 o'clock this evening, with results announced tomorrow. Travellers from Heathrow Airport are facing disruption and delays as security guards take further industrial action. That's after last-minute talks over a pay dispute which failed yesterday. 1,400 Unite union members have started a 3-day walkout today. It's part of an 8-day programme of strikes throughout the month of May. Labour and the Liberal Democrats have called for a robust windfall tax after the oil giant Shell reported a profit of £7.66 billion in the first quarter of this year. Shell joined rivals BP in significantly beating expectations. The profits dropped slightly from the previous quarter as energy prices cooled, but it's still making almost £1.4 billion more than expected. A UK regulator has launched a review of artificial intelligence. The report is going to be looking at tools and algorithms used to train computers to process and analyse data. The Competition and Markets Authority is focusing on competitiveness and consumer protection. It aims to ensure the developing technology isn't misleading people nor giving them false information. And lastly, 6 green apprenticeships have been selected to mark the King's coronation for their contribution in creating a low-carbon economy. They include low-carbon heating technicians, countryside workers and forest craftspeople. It's hoped they'll encourage more people to work in the green industry. It also aims to ensure the country's workforce is equipped with the skills needed to support the transition to net zero. The government and employers will use the coronation emblem to promote the apprenticeships selected as the gold standard for green skills training. You're with GB News. More news as it happens. Now back to Patrick.
Yes, well, welcome back, everybody. Patrick Christys here at Buckingham Palace, and I must say, I am absolutely loving it. You can see the palace behind me there. We've already been up and down the Mall. I'll be going back to the Mall shortly, but I just want to say a quick hello to some of the people who are just over here. I think we can maybe play a little shot of the... Hey, there we go. Do we get a big wave, everybody? Hey, fantastic. There's quite a crowd building here. Yeah, there we go. Fantastic. Oh, brilliant people. Right, I'm absolutely loving this, I must say. Right, OK, but we're going to get to this shock poll now, a shock poll now that almost... Isn't it nice, sorry, isn't it nice to see people happy? It is, genuinely. Anyway, we're going to get to a shock poll now that almost half of the overseas countries where the King is the head of state, they want to become a republic. And I really don't think they should, but apparently they do. So as well as the UK, 14 nations have King Charles as their head of state. But a majority of people in Australia and Canada who were asked said that they would vote to get rid of the monarchy. And the other countries that were in favour of being a republic were Jamaica, the Bahamas, the Solomon Islands, and Antigua and Barbuda as well. So let's speak now to our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker, who is at Westminster Abbey for us. Cameron, now I suppose this is a little bit of a deflating poll, isn't it, as we gear up for the coronation, but hopefully, fingers crossed, the coronation itself might persuade some people who are on the fence in some of those Commonwealth countries that they're better in than out.
Yeah, it certainly is, Patrick. If you notice, over the last week, there have been a number of polls about various issues to do with the royal family. Of course, this is just one of the latest ones. Barbados used to have the British monarch as head of state, and then in November 2021, the then Prince Charles flew out to officially hand it over to become a republic. And perhaps there's several reasons as to why the polls are showing that 6 out of the 14 other realms and territories other than the United Kingdom want to be, if a referendum was held tomorrow, would want to become a republic. You've seen over the last couple of years, there's been several calls for reparations from various different countries. Of course, Harry and Meghan with their various bombshells, the most poignant of which perhaps was that Meghan accused an unnamed member of the royal family of questioning what colour their son Archie's skin would be when he was born. That was during the Oprah Winfrey interview back in 2021, which led to the late Queen having to release a statement saying recollections may vary. But I think on the international stage, it's incidents like that which really can damage the reputation of the royal family, particularly internationally. But of course, referendums are not going to be held tomorrow, Patrick, are they? In these 6 nations, it needs the government of that particular country to actually organise a referendum. And as you say, we've got the coronation happening this weekend, and this is going to be both a test and an opportunity for the royal household and the British government to really put on a show and perhaps persuade them to stay with the monarchy.
Cameron, thank you very much. Cameron Walker there, our royal reporter who's at Westminster Abbey for us. So that's the lay of the land when it comes to these Commonwealth countries. 6 of them apparently quite keen to leave the Commonwealth. One of those is Australia. Now, I'm joined by Alexander Downer, who is a former Australian Foreign Minister and was the High Commissioner to the UK from 2014 to 2018. Thank you very much for joining me. I can see the Australian flag fluttering just behind the camera here. In fact, the flags of most of these Commonwealth nations that want to leave, they are represented as well. Look, Alexander, where do you stand on this? Why do so many Australians want to leave the Commonwealth?
Leave the monarchy, you mean, not the Commonwealth. They're very happy with being in the Commonwealth. The percentage of them do want to become a republic. We had a referendum in 1999, and the monarchy won that referendum 55 to 45. So I actually have to say this should be put into some perspective. I don't think... Can you hear me? There's something wrong with the sound here,
Carry on,
I think.
Alexander. Sorry, I think I was having a little bit of problem hearing you there, but please just carry on.
In 1999, we had a referendum on this very issue, and the monarchy won 55 to 45. I think since then, people have generally lost interest in this issue. And this opinion poll is in that sense misleading because there's not much debate about it in Australia. There's not much interest in it. And to do it would involve a substantial constitutional upheaval. That's why people voted against it the first time. And I suspect there's no mood for it now either.
No, okay, all right. And it does appear to mostly be the younger generation. But can you just sell it to people? You know, why should Australia stay in the Commonwealth? I mean, what's the case for it staying in there?
Well, there are historic reasons and therefore reasons of culture and tradition which make the monarchy appealing to many Australians. But I think the really serious issue for Australians is about the way our constitution works. The Governor-General is the de facto head of state in Australia. He's the representative of the King. The King's only role in the management of Australia is the appointment of the Governor-General, and he does that on the advice of the Prime Minister of Australia. So, I mean, to get rid of the monarchy is to get rid of the Governor-General, is to get rid of the whole system that we have of the head of state. And then what will we do? Would we elect a man or a woman in a suit, a politician, to be our head of state? People don't really ask or answer those questions at the moment. And when they do get to focus on those questions, they tend to think, well, it's better to stay with the status quo.
Okay, Alexander, thank you very much. Alexander down there is a former Australian Foreign Minister and, of course, as well, was indeed the High Commissioner for the UK from 2014 to 2018. Okay, all right. So now is a very special week, and one pub in central London got two very special visitors this lunchtime, and the Prince and Princess of Wales went to the Dog and Duck, which has inspired many a good pub football team name. They were down in Soho. So I think we can maybe have a quick look at some of the pictures from their time there, spent pulling pints at the Dog and Duck in Soho. Or not, why not? Okay. Okay, all right, we're moving on. So there is a huge security operation in place here with 29,000 police officers on duty in the lead up to the coronation and over the bank holiday weekend as well. The police intend to use facial recognition technology, and that decision has been criticised by human rights campaigners. Look, and I just wonder where you stand on this, because for me, look, I'm all for security, clearly, and I want people to be weeded out of crowds. And by the way, look, it's not just the anti-monarchists who are potentially a threat here. We've got terrorists and just all sorts of people, okay? So I understand completely that the police need to step it right up, but then I look at the idea of facial recognition technology and I think we're already caught on CCTV however many hundreds of times a day. Do we then want this facial recognition technology that, you know, goodness only knows whether it's accurate as well? Joining me now is Madeleine Stone, who's the Legal and Policy Officer at Big Brother Watch. Madeleine, great to have you on the show. Thank you very, very much. Now, what do you make of this? Is this a step too far, or is this just something we need to keep us safe?
It's absolutely a step too far. Live facial recognition is an enormously authoritarian, intrusive technology that belongs on the streets of China and Russia, not on the streets of the UK. It should be nowhere near the coronation. Hundreds of thousands of people who are going to be going down to London from all over the world are there to celebrate, and instead they're going to be subjected to a biometric police ID check. A check that essentially treats our faces like barcodes. So this is completely overboard and a really, really worrying development from the Met.
How accurate is it then, Madeleine? Because your absolute nightmare is a situation whereby you end up getting linked to some kind of murder that you haven't committed or some horrific crime potentially here or abroad. I mean, is it actually accurate? Because for most people with no criminal record, it's all right, isn't it?
This technology is notoriously inaccurate. In fact, the Met's own stats show that it's 86% inaccurate. So out of all of the people who are flagged by this technology, 86% of them are innocent. They've been wrongly stopped. So there's a real risk here to the people who are down in London for the celebrations or indeed to protest, that they could be wrongly flagged as criminals, forced to prove their innocence. And we've seen this happen time and time again. Big Brother Watch has gone to a lot of live facial recognition deployments in London and in Cardiff. And we've seen people being stopped, surrounded by plainclothes officers, even children this has happened to, forced to give their ID, forced to have their fingerprints taken, held for a considerable time until police finally realise they've made a massive mistake. And this has happened time and time again over the years. So it's extremely likely this will happen again to people over the weekend, which is really the last thing that we want when we've got the eyes of the world watching Britain. For people who are going to be visiting the country to be subjected to this kind of Chinese-style authoritarian mass surveillance is a really bad look for the police and a bad look for the UK.
Yeah, Madeleine, I mean, good luck to whatever police officer decides that they want to try and lift some of those people who've been camping out for 6 or 7 days there on the Mall before the coronation, just as King Charles is coming up the Mall. If any police officer in their right mind tries to drag poor Dorothy from Skegness away, I think they're going to end up getting what's coming to them. But Madeleine, what would you respond to people who say, look, if it stops one terror attack, then it's worth it? This is the price we pay. We're already caught on CCTV 300 times a day. Look, come on, get over it.
Of course, we all want to be kept safe, and no one would argue with the fact that we do need a kind of larger policing operation when it comes to big events like this. But that doesn't mean that police have a blank cheque to roll out rights abusive technology wherever they see fit. And of course, it's important to note that there's no laws governing the use of live facial recognition. It's not mentioned in any laws. It's never even been debated in Parliament. So the police have really been let off the leash with this technology. They're using it however they see fit, writing their own policies about how it's being used. The Home Office really need to step in and tell the police to stop using it.
OK, look, Madeleine, thank you very much. Madeleine Stone there is the Legal and Policy Officer at Big Brother Watch. Of course, the police are going to be stepping in, apparently, with some kind of preemptive arrest laws, and they're going to have more powers to search people's bags, especially if they find them in possession of glue and those bike locks that we've seen a lot of protesters been using to glue themselves to roads and, in some cases, lock themselves to each other, of course, in the run-up to the coronation. But this is going to be the next step to it. So they're not actually going to be removing people's signs that say things like, "Not my king." And I thought it was fascinating. In the last hour, I spoke to a professor who is actually believes in the abolition of the monarchy, and what he was saying is that those people who turn up, mostly young people, with their signs that say "Not my king," are basically just pathetic losers who haven't really got any kind of proper cause or argument behind them, because turning up to an event like this where loads of people are gathering and trying to have a good time and trying to have a laugh and feel a sense of nice British community and Commonwealth community as well, the idea that you're going to hold up a sign that says "Not my king" is just going to wind people up, ruin people's days and achieve absolutely nothing. So there we go. I've got loads more though from Buckingham Palace, and a little later I will speak to the people who are camping out ahead of the coronation in a feature that we call Patrick's People. So I've got all of that coming your way, but I am covering the rest of the day's news as well, including the claim that the UK government is ignoring a humanitarian crisis in this country. Are we sending too much money abroad and not spending enough money right here? So we've got patients in wards in hospitals that need better facilities. We've got kids in schools that need better facilities, etc. And there's a report that's come out which suggests that we're spending too much money on humanitarian aid abroad, or it could be spent right back here in Britain. Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
is the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching. Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Dubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Saturday nights on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
Saturday nights on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Last few days, and again I will have it tomorrow. We've also got some wonderful crowds building behind the GB News tent here as well, and they're all coming to say hello, which is a rather nice thing. I've been out and about speaking to people on the Mall as well, and so we're all getting to know each other rather well. Get yourselves down here. It is quite the atmosphere that's building here at Buckingham Palace as we gear up for the coronation. Everyone very excited, and I must say as well, some of those people who've been camping out, I think they're doing it exactly right, because they've basically secured themselves for free, as far as I can gather, one of the most expensive postcodes in London, if not the world, and I can vouch for the fact that they have been sitting there drinking glasses of Prosecco and eating prawn sandwiches since earlier on this morning. So, I mean, it's not a bad life, people. It's not a bad life. But a bit of a shift in tone now, because we're not just here for the royal news, and this story, I think, may well be deemed a little bit inappropriate to discuss in front of Buckingham Palace, given the location of it, but we are going to do it anyway, because I do think it's very, very serious. I saw an article this morning that got me thinking about this. Now, when a streaker runs across a football pitch, many people smile or even cheer, don't they? They think that it's a little bit of a laugh. But for the vast majority of people, especially women, indecent exposure is, of course, no laughing matter. In fact, more and more people, especially psychologists, are warning that the practice can be a gateway to more serious sexual offences. Let's take the tragic case, for example, of Sarah Everard. Her killer, Wayne Couzens, as well, was a serial flusher and had been caught exposing himself just weeks before he kidnapped and raped her. So what is the psychology behind flushing? And is it getting worse? And here to discuss all of this with me is Jo Hemmings, who is a behavioural psychologist and a friend of the channel as well. Jo, look, thank you very, very much. And the reason why this article caught my eye this morning, why I wanted to talk about it, is because flushers used to be seen, I think, as maybe sad men who were potentially, it was arguably even something that people laughed at a little bit, but no longer, and it has got very serious undertones to it. What is the psychology of the kind of people who go out and about and do that stuff, and is it a gateway to more serious crimes?
Hi, Patrick. Look, it can be a gateway to more serious crimes. It's a form of exhibitionism, very often from men who either have repressed sexuality of some sort. Well, what they're doing is they're getting off, they're getting their kicks, their thrill out of exposing themselves and seeing the reaction of an unsuspecting woman. So that's the thrill of it, to just have that control of that power for momentarily while they totally disarm and surprise somebody with what they do. Because it is something that people tend to do serially, it's not something someone does on occasion, it's something they get quite addicted to, that thrill, that frisson of seeing somebody alarmed by your behaviour. Of course, it can be a gateway behaviour to far worse sexual deviancy or harassment, rape, whatever it may be. So it's really troublesome. It was never funny. I mean, maybe in the retelling of a story, it was kind of amusing because you feel relatively safe. It's horrible, it's unpleasant, it's threatening, but it's not actually, there's no physical touch involved. So it's just generally unpleasant. But for the men who do it, the addiction to that, to the result, to the outcome of their behaviour is the worrying aspect of indecent exposure.
Mm. And look, do you think that this is potentially getting worse, not better? I mean, despite the fact that now there's more CCTV around than ever, and frankly, you've got much more chance of getting caught, haven't you, than if you were out flashing in the 70s or the 80s. So that doesn't appear to necessarily be putting people off. I just wonder, is it that just absolute compulsion then, where when you're in the moment, you just, well, I was going to say you can't help it, but obviously you can, but you get what I mean.
Yeah, it is a compulsion. And actually, you mentioned CCTV. That's more likely to encourage flashers because there's an extra, frisson of risk going on if you think you might get caught. Plus, I think we've had the whole thing about men sending indecent pics to women online. It's sort of almost become amusing, and it's fairly horrible, but, it happens to a lot of women. And I think it's all got a bit mixed up in that. So if they think they can cyber flash, then actually they can flash in real life. So yes, I imagine it probably is getting more frequent, and the fact there are, closed circuit television on them simply wouldn't put many men off. In fact, it would probably encourage.
Yeah, no, indeed. And also, I think it's worthwhile here talking about the victims of flashing and how it can affect them.
Yeah, look, it's really unpleasant. You get the shock factor, it's repulsive. You're going about your business, your everyday life, and suddenly somebody on the underground or on a bus or in the street, it's the last thing you expect. And it's a really unpleasant, shocking, violated feeling. But it's not the feeling that you get from somebody physically touching you. But nevertheless, it really, messes with your head, and you can't unsee what you've just seen. All the reasons. If you said that to a flasher, they'd continue to do it because that's where they're getting their pleasure from. Over 50% of women have reported being flashed at, physically in real life, not just cyber flashing. So it's horribly commonplace, and it's just something, you have to accept that some men do, and revolting as it is, just feel grateful that there's no physical encounter. It's very hard to report. Because the man usually runs away very quickly, zips up and off he goes. So it's very hard to report it as a crime, which makes it, doesn't stop you being the victim and feeling really repulsed by it. However, it's one of those things that do not get reported for the simple reason that the perpetrator is not around for long enough to report it.
Okay, all right. Look, Joe, thank you very, very much. Really fascinating insight. That's Joe Hemmings, who is behavioural psychologist, just reacting to a story that I saw earlier on today, really, about the fact that flashing can become a gateway to more aggressive sexual crimes. And indeed, I think the public psychology on it has actually shifted from it maybe being, I was a flasher in the park. I mean, I can remember, some of my older relatives talking about it and almost having a bit of a smile on their face when they say it. But actually, it is, and I think rightly so, being treated a lot more seriously than it used to be. Anyway, I've got loads more coming your way between now and 5 o'clock, and the government has recently spent a vast amount of taxpayers' money airlifting British passport holders and their dependents out of Sudan. That's just one example of the way that we've been spending our money, taxpayers' money, abroad. But should that money have been spent here instead? I think there's a serious case to be asked now about whether or not we should be spending more of our taxpayers' money back here at home as opposed to trying to help out every single individual all over the world. And if you enjoyed seeing me get out and about on the Mall yesterday, well, you're in luck because I'll be out and about again. Now, Just apologies to the chap who's skiving off work, who I named and shamed on national television whilst I was on the Mall earlier. But hey, that's live TV for you. It's another instalment of Patrick's People, and that is coming your way very, very shortly. So there we go. But first, of course, it is your headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Patrick, thanks very much indeed. And the top stories this hour. Some breaking news, in fact. A jury in the United States has convicted 4 members of the far-right Proud Boys militia, including its former leader, Enrico Tarrio, of seditious conspiracy. They plotted to attack the US Capitol on January the 6th in 2021 in a failed bid to block Congress from verifying President Joe Biden's election victory. 5 people, including a police officer, died during or shortly after the riot, and more than 140 police officers were injured. In other news, the Prince and Princess of Wales have been visiting a pub in central London ahead of the coronation weekend. Large crowds turned up in Soho to catch a glimpse of the royal couple. They've been in the area to hear how the hospitality industry is preparing for the big event. And to get there, they travelled on the tube, taking the Elizabeth line for the very first time, chatting away to Transport for London workers about their plans for the busy bank holiday ahead. Meanwhile, a flypast to celebrate the coronation may have to be cancelled due to forecast bad weather. The Ministry of Defence has warned it could hamper the ability of pilots to fly safely. Forecasters expect London to be cloudy and wet on Saturday, with rainfall forecast around lunchtime. More than 60 aircraft from the Royal Navy, the British Army, the Royal Air Force, including the Red Arrows, are scheduled to fly over the Mall and Buckingham Palace at around 2:15. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says Vladimir Putin must be brought to justice for the war in his country. He made the comments during a meeting at The Hague, where the International Criminal Court is based. It comes after Ukraine said it shot down 18 of 24 drones in an overnight attack, which followed a strike on the Kremlin, with Moscow accusing Kyiv of trying to assassinate Putin. And voting is well underway in local elections, with millions of people expected to cast their ballot today. Around 8,000 seats across 230 local authorities in England are up for grabs. 4 mayoral elections are also taking place in Bedford, Leicester, Mansfield and Middlesbrough. Polls closing at 10 p.m. tonight. The results, full coverage for you on GB News tomorrow. On TV, online, DAB+ radio and the TuneIn app. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
OK, ladies and gentlemen, now prepare for a bit more chaos on the Mall very shortly. I'm going to be heading out there and speaking to some of the wonderful people who've been camping out. But just want to give you a little bit of an insight as well as what's going on behind us. The crowds are here today, and we have got a few GB News fans who really know. Hey, there we go. So I just thought I'd let them get themselves on the telly. All right, thank you very much. Well, yeah, loads of people have been gathering here, as you can see. The sense of excitement really is building here. Outside Buckingham Palace, we prepare for the coronation. Get yourselves down. Why not be part of it? Now, though, the government has revealed today that 2,450 British nationals were evacuated from Sudan. But did you know that the government isn't even obliged to assist dual nationals in another country? And should they have used the money on some of our problems at home? And this is really where I'm at on this. We have got a humanitarian crisis at home, have we not? Seems to be what we're being told. Aren't the schools in crisis? Isn't the NHS in crisis? Isn't everything in crisis? Well, if it is, then should we not be spending that money right here? Benjamin Loughnane joins me now. He's a research fellow at the Bow Group think tank. Benjamin, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. Does it sound a bit heartless if people say, well, you know what, we shouldn't have airlifted people out of Sudan? Bear in mind, though, Benjamin, I mean, it's not just Sudan, is it? We are talking, of course, aren't we, about the idea that NHS data says 7 million people are on waiting lists for specialist clinical care. I mean, we've got also 66,195 people waiting longer than 62 days to start surgery last year, almost double the pre-COVID figure. Why are we helping out so many other people?
Yeah, absolutely. Charity, as it says, begins at home. You need to take care of the people in your own country before you start trying to solve problems over the rest of the world. And you look at countries like, for example, India, who we give foreign aid money to. They've got a space program. What are we doing? Giving money to a country with a space program when you have people who can't pay their heating bills or afford to eat in this country. And I really do think it's time to reassess our priorities. Maybe foreign aid at one point was a great idea when the developing world was still, desperately in need of it and we had plenty to give away. But as we get poorer and as they get richer, I think it might be time to reassess our policy.
I just wonder whether, Benjamin, we've been trying too long to have a foot in both camps, where we're giving foreign aid in dribs and drabs, roughly in the region of around 11 to 15 billion quid a year. But then, of course, on top of that, then we're also not sending enough money for them to really sort out the problems that they've got in their own countries. So then we're also dealing with those problems back here at home as well, like we're seeing with the migrant crisis, for example. And then, of course, we then don't have all the money in the world to actually sort out our own infrastructure. It just feels like we need to do one thing or the other, doesn't it? We either send a load of money abroad and say, please sort your mess out, and then we don't have to deal with it, or we just put it all into our own infrastructure.
Yeah, completely. And one of the other problems with foreign aid is, how much control do we have over where that money goes? How can we be certain that what we're giving it in for the intentions for is actually where it ends up? A lot of the time, when there's money around, there's always a little bit of people creaming off the top or whatever else. So it may very well be the case that we're sending all of this huge amounts of money and it's not going to address the problems that it's meant to. So yes, it might be kind-hearted and well-meaning, but it's not very intelligent. But fundamentally, the point for me is that there are people struggling in this country. If we had solved every issue in Britain, then fine, go off and help the rest of the world. But whilst you have your own fellow countrymen starving and freezing and not able to pay their bills or their mortgage or their rent or get by, why are we sending billions of money, which we are taking from them? We are taxing it from those people who are struggling to send abroad. Yeah. I mean, it really is, I think, farcical.
Yeah, and also what I can't understand is the idea that this genuinely buys us loads of soft power. It doesn't. Africa is basically now essentially run by the Chinese government because they've pumped a huge amount more into infrastructure. We paid into the European Union massively for decades, and then we got absolutely nothing in return, essentially, when we left, and they don't particularly like us, and they've expected us to step up to the plate for Ukraine. And then we seem shocked, don't we, when we send some money over to some far-flung African dictator, and shock horror, not a lot of that money ends up in the mouths of poor people living in their country. It is totally self-defeating. And Benjamin, would it not just be a pretty cut-and-dry vote winner for someone to go, you see that massive NHS backlog there? You see the people who are dying on cancer wards because we can't give them enough treatment in enough time? Yeah, we're going to just give them the money, and we're not actually going to give it to some corrupt African despot of a nation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we should be, it should go to our public services before it goes abroad, especially the ones that are struggling. But with the NHS, I think it's not just a case of throwing money at it. We do need to reform it root and branch so that we can be sure that that money is being spent properly and not being wasted. So, for example, in areas like procurement, we need to be ensuring that they are procuring equipment and supplies and whatnot from places where there is competitivity in the market and they're getting the best price, rather than, as we saw during lockdown, during the pandemic, we had these this procurement for PPE going to certain companies which were ramping up the prices, gouging. We wasted huge amounts of money on defunct or defective equipment which never got used. So we do need to be very clear that, yes, we should be putting this money into our public services in this country, but also we need to be sure that we're spending it properly.
What would you say, Benjamin, to the people who go, well, look, it's just a drop in the ocean. Things like foreign aid and everything else that comes out on top of it as well is just a drop in the ocean, and it would not solve our NHS crises, or it would not solve our education crisis and all of that stuff.
Well, it may be a drop in the ocean to politicians who think in figures of billions, not pounds and pence. But I think, if you can save one old person from freezing to death in their home, or you can feed one mouth in Britain, it's worthwhile. Even if it is just a couple of billion to them, I think it's quite a lot to the people of this country who are struggling.
Yeah, and Benjamin, one final one with you, if that's all right. Do you think Britain is expected to be absolutely everything to all people, when actually maybe we can't quite have that at the moment. I was amazed by the articles there in Sudan about Sudan going, oh, Britain is so slow to act, oh, we're not doing enough. Then you look at what was happening in Turkey, despite the fact that the British public donated millions, tens of millions of pounds out of their own pocket to go and help with that crisis. Oh, what's our government doing with the Turkish earthquake? Well, sorry, nothing. As far as I can tell, why? Why should we? It's not our earthquake, is it? You know, and then at the same time, here at home, they're supposed to go, well, let's give people an above-inflation pay rise in the public sector. Let's give every single child free school meals. Let's do everything. I mean, where do people think all this money comes from?
Yeah, I think there's been a cognitive dissonance. We have this mentality of saying, you know, Britain, oh, it's terrible we ever had an empire, or whether it went abroad or did anything in other countries. We should stick to ourselves and let them get on with their own affairs. But also, whenever there's a problem, we've got to send them money. We've got to go there and help them. We've got to fix the crisis. I mean, which is it? Either we are involved globally with those countries, helping them and assisting them, or we are keeping to ourselves. But I do think people want it both ways. You can't have that. It's, we want you when we've got a problem, but we don't want you the rest of the time. And I think that's the problem, really.
Yeah, Benjamin, look, great stuff. Thank you very much, mate. Benjamin Loughnane there, who is a research fellow at the Bow Group think tank, just whizzing you through. Yes, it's that old charity starts at home argument again, isn't it? But you just look at those NHS stats there, and, I mean, it is ridiculous, really. But there we go. Right, OK, ladies and gentlemen. Well, I'm going to be going out and about, I think, very, very shortly. Yes, I am. What could possibly go wrong? I've had enough of standing up here. There's a great atmosphere here at Buckingham Palace, and I decided that I wanted to get out and about with the fans who are celebrating a historic event in just a few minutes. I'm going to go and speak to some of the royal superfans on the Mall, and I am laughing because, well, let's be honest with you, it's going to be chaotic, but this is fantastic. Patrick's People. I'm Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories. Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Is watching.
Well, I'm in the Mall on the Mall, ladies and gents. It's getting a lot busier than it was yesterday and the day before that. Patrick Christys just outside Buckingham Palace for you as we gear up to the coronation. And this is my favourite bit of the show. Why? Because we get to meet real people and lovely people as well. Now, you ladies have come from rather a long way in order to be here for the coronation, haven't you?
Yes, we flew in this morning from Johannesburg, South Africa.
This morning?
This morning, for this event, for this. Our mother was a royalist, and it's, well, we've all caught on to it, so, yeah.
You've got the bug, so you come together. Are you sisters?
We're sisters, yes.
I mean, that would make a lot of sense, wouldn't it, actually? There we go. So what's your name?
My name is Davine.
Davine?
Yes.
Okay. And you?
Margaret.
Okay, so basically you got the royal bug from your mum.
Mother.
Is that right? And what is... Go on.
It was such a royal event, such a royal bug. I've got, my name's Margaret Elizabeth Mary. How much more royal do you want?
Absolutely brilliant. You love it. Right, okay, so I mean it's a heck of a long journey for you, but you have now managed to secure a pretty prime spot, because we are, don't know if we can quite see, because there's some like protective barriers up, but obviously Buckingham Palace is right there, so you're literally at the front of the queue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They waited for us to get here.
They did.
Yes,
They did.
It was booked for us.
Yeah, I have it on good authority as well. Actually, there was a rumour that your flight was going to be delayed, and they nearly called the whole thing off. You know, so are these all your flags as well, or what have you got? Can I go? Hello, you're not getting out of this. You're not getting out of this. You're not getting out of this. Where did you get these flags from?
She's a collector of all the bits.
You're a collector?
I got them all on. Yeah.
I've just seen something in your bag. I'm going to go through your bag. Is that all right? They say you should never go through a lady's bag, but there we go. Now, who's this little chap?
This is Charlie Boy.
Charlie Boy. Okay.
And my sister bought him for me.
Right. So, how are you keeping yourselves entertained here on the... are you camping? Is this going to be days for you, is it?
Yes, what we're going to do.
Yeah.
We're not made of sugar. We're not going to melt.
No.
We come from South Africa. We're not scared of rain. We're not going to melt.
Well, that's just as well, actually, because, you know, supposedly it is going to rain.
But it's not going to rain.
Okay.
Here in England, I believe if there's 3 drops of rain, then they say it's raining.
Yeah. Okay. So you don't think we're hard enough here?
No.
I have never seen a woman shout at the weather before to try to tell the weather off. So, you know, I mean, this is great. Here we go. We're going to move it along. Look, ladies, thank you. This is fantastic. All right, you take care. You take care. This is magnificent. Now, there is very much an international feel here and a flavour on the mouth. So we've had some ladies from South Africa, and we have got here some people who've come all the way from, where have you come from?
From Kansas City.
From Kansas City. And both of you, have you come?
San Antonio, Texas.
San Antonio, Texas. So I've got to ask, why?
You know what? This is a part of history. We got to be here, even though we don't know a lot about the royals in general being from the States. We had to be here for this historical moment.
Amazing. And so, I mean, how much did it cost you to get here?
I mean, we were able to kind of come together as a group. There's 4 of us, so we were able to kind of share the cost. But yeah, it's been wonderful just to be here and be a part of all this. We were able to come and see the funeral of the Queen and everything and be a part of that. So
well, this is obviously a much happier event. So that'll be quite nice for you, I imagine. You've kind of had obviously depression. Let's be honest, and then somber's a better word. You should do this for a living. I mean, this is one of the problems with me getting out and about and talking to the public, is that I realise how many people could do a much better job than I can of the job that I'm paid to do. But so what's sustaining you? I've got to be honest with you. I can see some. Well, talk me through what your snacks are.
Full of sugar. Yes.
Okay. Sugar. Got to keep the energy up.
We have beef jerky.
Yeah.
And
you got loads of stuff. And look, can I ask you this? I've always been fascinated by why so many Americans absolutely love our royal family. What is it?
Well, for me, I think part of it is that it's so different. There is not really anyone that I can think of that I love as much as the story of the royal family. It just feels very, still very magical and very endearing. It's.
And what is it for you? When did you really get into it?
Honestly, my mom was a huge fan of Princess Diana, and watched the wedding and was very somber at her passing and everything like that. So I grew up being very involved in just the history and the family of it. So it's been wonderful just to kind of see it, especially being able to come here and see it in person.
So you're going to be giving the king a big wave as he comes past you on Saturday, I take it. Yes, you are. Oh. Brilliant.
Tell him to come our way.
I will. Well, I am obviously on first name terms with the king, so I will. Now, we have been talking, thank you very much, ladies. I hope you enjoy it. And now, I've been talking a lot on the course of this show so far, actually, about some concerning stats that have just dropped. So new polls have taken place, which appear to show anyway that around 6 Commonwealth countries would want to leave if there was a vote there, a referendum held there tomorrow. And I met this chap yesterday, actually, and he very kindly offered to talk to me. And as if by magic, he's re-emerged now. So there we go. Can I just ask you, where are you from, first and foremost?
Well, I live in London, North London, but my heritage is Antiguan.
Exactly, and we were chatting yesterday, weren't we, about what you felt about the Commonwealth, because Antigua and Barbuda is one of the countries that is potentially, if there was a vote held there tomorrow, as far as we can tell, they would vote to leave the Commonwealth. Why do you think that is?
Well, I don't know. I'm not too sure about that. I know there are discussions at the moment as to whether or not we should still remain part of the Commonwealth. There are mixed views at the moment. I know some people believe that we should stay within the Commonwealth. There are others that believe this is an antiquated system and we should leave. My views personally is a bit indifferent and ambivalent. I know we're going to have a referendum. That's what's been suggested. And I'll wait to see what happens in that referendum.
And have you got any strong idea about which way you would vote? What could be said or done, do you think, that would persuade you? Because we haven't, I'm looking for the flag of Antigua. I don't think there is actually one here at the minute. Is there? Is it over there? It's all the way over there. It's the first one. Oh, okay, there we go. So you've got, there is representation. There's Commonwealth representation. Absolutely. It clearly means a huge amount to, most people here and the people inside Buckingham Palace. What could be said to convince you, because you're indifferent at the moment, that referendum was tomorrow. What could they say to get your vote to stay in?
Well, I suppose a number of issues, really. One, what is the new King Charles III going to do for my region? And I'm not just talking about Antigua, because I don't know if you know, but Jamaica potentially is hoping to leave the Commonwealth. Barbados has already left, so it's a region. We're talking about what is Prince Charles going to do for that sort of hemisphere, and is he going to come with a package as to, how the people of the Caribbean are going to fit into this new modern model that he has for us?
Well, we've got an ideal opportunity to do that. Part of supposedly getting our sovereignty back when we left the EU was, in my opinion anyway, as far as I thought, was to do stuff exactly like what you've just said there, which was to go out and reconnect with the Commonwealth and create our own kind of union and really further that. So as far as you're concerned, you are still open to the idea of saying.
But I think another issue for me is the issue of reparation. I know that's a totally different issue, but I know that King Charles has alluded to the fact that he wants to have a dialogue with regards to reparation for the descendants of slaves. And I think he should be lauded for that. And I do hope in the future we have some sort of meaningful dialogue with respect to reparation rather than just mere platitudes.
Okay, that's interesting. And just specifically, what would you like to see in that regard? I suppose, how does it work is the thing, do we end up with reparations for everything? How would it work, do you think?
Well, I don't know how it works exactly, but we know in the past that the slave owners got reparation. It wasn't difficult for them to work out. So I'm sure they can work out a system to see how the Caribbean or that region could get a reparation.
Look, lovely to chat to you, and thank you very, very much. And I'm just going to keep working my way down because I've got, I think, 1 minute left. Oh, hello, you. I've got 1 minute left. Hey, yes, you seem like the perfect people to round it off. How are you? Are you all right?
Fine. How are you?
I'm very well. Where have you come from?
Alexandria, Virginia.
Oh, wow. Why?
Because I've been writing about British and European royalty for more than 40 years, and this is the biggest event since 1953.
Yeah.
And it's the most important day in King Charles's life. So why not be here?
Why not be here? Can I just say, fantastic. I don't know if we can get a maybe kind of bottom to top view of this, as it were. There we are. But there we go. So I mean, amazing outfit.
Thank you.
Amazing outfit. And how long did it take you to put it together?
Quite a while, surprisingly. I was up sewing quite late last night.
You sewed it yourself?
Yeah, put it all together for the special occasion.
Why do you care so much?
I just think it's such an amazing opportunity. I mean, it's never going to happen again in our lifetime. So I think, yeah, I just wanted to be part of the big celebration.
Yeah, absolutely. And are you going to be camping out, or what's your...
Set up over there. I have a chair. I do not have a tent, so I'll be sleeping in my chair.
No.
Yes, I have lots of layers of clothing. I have a sleeping bag. I'll be nice and warm and hopefully dry.
All right. What's your name?
Mel.
Mel, right, okay. So I'm going to wrap it up now. Can I just ask, can somebody, for the love of God, get Mel a tent? I mean, you can't have Mel just go, look at this, you can't have her just out here in the cold of the night in a chair. Anyway, right, look, I'm absolutely loving this. I hope you are at home as well. Make sure you stay tuned. Loads more coming your way for the next hour. Patrick and Christys here on GB News. We are your coronation station.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope?
It's very much so.
And the big moral questions of the day. I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, a very good evening, everybody. It's just about to go 5 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys, and as you can see, I am at the wonderful regal setting of Buckingham Palace, where we have been camped here for GB News for the last week, and we'll be all the way through to the main event on Saturday. Not long now, is it? Not long. And yes, we're going to be bringing you all the royal news today. Some of the top ones that stood out to me, really, were, of course, about whether or not these 6 Commonwealth nations are really going to leave. Do you think that they actually are going to? And also on top of that as well, are the police doing enough, even with facial recognition technology, to be clamping down on some of the protesters? But the crowds that are out there now, they're all very much happy to be here. You've seen me going and talking to people on the Mall, people coming from all over the world to just soak this in and live history with us here on GB News, which is, of course, your coronation station. And the heir to the throne as well, though, Prince William, he's been all over the place today. His preparations for Saturday have geared up by going to a pub and pulling a couple of pints. Good for him. Find out what happened when William and Kate went into that boozer in central London. It's one I have fallen out of many times, so hopefully you fared better than I did. And the excitement is very much building, and so are the crowds on the Mall, where I've just been running up and down and making a fool of myself and getting covered in dust. They are getting the prime spot so that you can see the royal procession on Saturday. We've had people from South Africa, America. There was a chap I spoke to there from Antigua as well. I mean, really everywhere. And Bolton, although that particular individual hasn't told his boss that he was off work, not because he was ill, but because he was here and he didn't like being on the telly. But there we go. Sorry, Brian. And of course, as well, the wife of the Ukrainian president has been greeted at Downing Street by Rishi Sunak's wife, Akshata Murty. It's nice to see a little bit of the bunting out there. I'm rather surprised that none of it has the Ukrainian flag on it. But there we go. Patrick Christys on GB News. Yes, OK. Well, look, ladies and gents, as you well know, it's going to be full of royal news and non-royal news, and you've got a little sneaky peek of Rehabilitating Manku's shoulder there, and he's going to be joining me throughout the course of the next hour as well, and quite right too, in the presence of royalty, as well as just talking about it. But now, though, back to another version of broadcasting royalty. It is Polly Middlehurst for the headlines.
Patrick, thank you, and good evening to you. Our top story on GB News today: 4 members of the far-right Proud Boys group have been convicted for plotting the attack on the US Capitol on January the 6th, 2021. The group's former leader, Enrique Tarrillo, is one of those found guilty of seditious conspiracy. Protesters failed in a bid to block Congress from verifying President Joe Biden's election victory. 5 people, including a police officer, died during or shortly after the riot, and more than 140 police officers were injured. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has cut short his visit to Ireland, saying he's going back to New York to confront his accuser in a civil rape case.
Everybody having a good time?
Yeah. Absolutely.
You didn't know this about Trump, did you? You didn't know this.
Well, the former US president, who's currently on his way to Shannon Airport, has been visiting his golf courses in the country. He's described the case as a political attack and says he'll probably attend the hearing. He's been accused of raping a former magazine columnist in 1996, a charge he denies. And as you've been hearing, the Prince and Princess of Wales have been visiting a pub in central London ahead of the coronation weekend. Large crowds turned up in Soho to catch a glimpse of the royal couple at the Dog and Duck. They've been in the area to hear how the hospitality industry is preparing for the big event. And to get there, the pair travelled on the tube, taking the Elizabeth line for the very first time and chatting away to Transport for London workers about their plans for the busy bank holiday ahead. Meanwhile, a fly past to celebrate the coronation could be cancelled due to poor weather. The Ministry of Defence has warned it could hamper the ability of pilots to fly safely. Forecasters expect London to be cloudy and wet on Saturday, with rainfall forecast around lunchtime. More than 60 aircraft from the Royal Navy, the British Army, the Royal Air Force, including the Red Arrows, are scheduled to fly over the Mall and Buckingham Palace at around 2:15. International news, and Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says Vladimir Putin must be brought to justice for the war in his country. He made the comments during a meeting at The Hague, where the International Criminal Court is based. It comes after Ukraine said it shot down 18 of 24 drones in an overnight attack. The bombardment followed a strike on the Kremlin, with Moscow having accused Kyiv of trying to assassinate President Putin.
Of course, we all want to see different Vladimir here in The Hague. the one who deserves to be sentenced for these criminal actions right here in the capital of the international law. And I'm sure we will see that happen when we win, and we will win.
Travellers from Heathrow Airport are facing disruption today as delays because of security guards as they take further industrial action. That's after last-minute talks over a pay dispute failed yesterday. 1,400 Unite Union members have started a 3-day walkout today. It's part of an 8-day programme of strikes throughout the month of May. Labour and the Liberal Democrats have called for a robust windfall tax after the oil giant Shell reported a profit of £7.66 billion in the first quarter of this year. Shell joined its rivals BP in significantly beating expectations. The profits dropped slightly from the previous quarter as energy prices cooled, but it's still making almost £1.4 billion more than expected. Voting is well underway in local elections, with millions of people expected to cast their ballot today. Around 8,000 seats across 230 local authorities in England are up for grabs. 4 mayoral elections are also taking place in Bedford, Leicester, Mansfield and Middlesbrough. It's the first time voters are required to show photo ID. Polls close at 10 o'clock tonight. The results announced tomorrow here on GB News. Now, animal experts are hoping they can remove the carcass of a 55-foot whale from a beach in Yorkshire. The 30-ton animal was spotted getting into difficulties in the sea in Bridlington earlier on this week, but sadly died on Tuesday. A huge operation is now taking place over the next couple of days, which includes road closures in the local area. It's hoped the body of the whale can be removed from the beach whole without the need to tamper with it. You're with GB News. More news as it happens now. Back to Patrick.
Now, it's an invite that most people would absolutely die for. A seat at the coronation, a moment of history, last seen 70 years ago. But one person has said thanks, but no thanks. I'm not talking about Joe Biden. The Speaker of the Welsh Parliament, Elin Jones, won't be coming because she's a Republican. She said, "I have taken a personal decision not to attend the coronation. The Senate will be represented by the Deputy Presiding Officer. As Speaker, I have engaged fully in all constitutional duties with the Head of State." Oh, well, you're welcome. There you go, anyway. And will continue to do so. However, as a Republican, I consider it is for others to celebrate a coronation. I wish the royal couple well in their years of service. There we go. I mean, this does appear to be an absolutely monumental snub, and I just wonder how the people of Wales actually really feel about this. Well, here's one of them. It's Andrew R.T. Davies, who's the leader of the Welsh Conservatives. Andrew, thank you very, very much for joining me here now. Is this not quite offensive?
Good afternoon, Patrick, and thanks for having me. It is offensive, but what I feel for Elin Jones is more disappointment and sorrow. Disappointment that she can't distinguish between her personal view and her official role, because her official role as Speaker is a neutral role, and she shouldn't be bringing her personal opinions into that role. And don't forget, the invitation to attend the coronation is not to Elin Jones, it is to the Speaker or the Llywydd of the Welsh Parliament. And then I also feel very sorry for the presiding officer that since she's obviously taken the chair, she hasn't learned that that role is an impartial role, and ultimately she should exercise her personal role, her personal views separate from the role of presiding officer. So I think she is letting people down in Wales, and above all, she's letting herself down.
Yeah, but what is the mood like in Wales? You know, has Wales got a lot of royalists there? Because if that is the case, then realistically, as the leader of the Senate, this lady has to just, you know, put a big girl pants on and go and turn up to the coronation, represent the people of Wales.
Well, let's not forget that the King Charles, was for the longest period of any tenure of the Prince of Wales that anyone's held that role, and he set up the Prince's Trust, and he held various events and functions in Wales that clearly identified his time as Prince of Wales. And there's a lot of affection for him through that role. But now, obviously, he's going to be crowned as king at Westminster Abbey on Saturday. There are so many significant roles for a national position to be taken here. And as I said, from the presiding officer's position, the invitation is in the role of presiding officer, not as an individual, Ellen Jones. I myself will be attending the coronation. I don't for 1 minute think I've been invited as Andrew R.T. Davies. I've been invited because I'm leader of the Welsh Conservatives in the Welsh Parliament. And it's for all of us to exercise that judgment and fulfil the roles that we're elected to.
Can I just ask, I don't know if you know this off the top of your head, but do you think this particular lady happened to be a Remainer?
And yes, she is a Remainer, but also we have quite a bit of a local problem for the Welsh. We also have quite a local problem at the moment for the Welsh Nationalists, and there's a question over the leadership of the Welsh Nationalists at the moment. And if she does want to exercise more of a political role in her judgment, then obviously I think she's putting her CV forward to be considered in that leadership role for the Welsh Nationalists. But as long as she occupies the role of Llawydd, she should distinguish between her personal political role and the impartial role that the Speaker occupies, because there's a very important distinction in that role.
Yeah, no, I just think it's probably absolutely fascinating to try to pick into the psychology of an individual who would want to abolish the monarchy, which has done a huge amount for this country and indeed the people of Wales, but actually would have been absolutely A-OK with remaining part of a club that, well, frankly, is, in my opinion, pretty useless and was costing us more money than we were getting out of it. But there we go. Unlike, of course, the royal family, which is actually a net financial benefit to people.
Don't forget, Patrick, as well, that for the first time there are going to be hymns sung in Welsh. There's a harpist attending from Wales who will be playing at the coronation as well. And this emphasises the King's strong links to Wales through that role that he fulfilled for many years.
Yeah. Andrew, look, thank you very, very much. We're gonna just leave it there, Andrew. But that's Andrew. Yeah, good stuff. Sorry, Andrew, I lost you there for a quick second, but it was about time anyway. So thank you very much for your time, and thank you for bringing this story to our attention. Andrew R.T. Davies, who is leader of the Welsh Conservatives. Right, OK, so we're just going to move it on now. The pressure is mounting on the royal family, get this, to apologise for the crimes of the past. So 12 Commonwealth countries have now signed a letter which refers to centuries of racism, oppression, colonialism and slavery. They want a formal apology and for talks about reparations to start. But I am joined, thankfully, by a voice, a beacon in otherwise dark and bleak existence. It's royal historian Rafe Haydoe-Mancu. Rafe, thank you very much. How are you?
Pleasure always to see you.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, look, in this sea of royal negativity which seems to be going around at the moment, which is a real shame, because if you just go out and talk to the real ordinary people who are here lining the trees, as indeed we have been doing, everybody's happy, the street parties, the garden parties are going to be taking place, but unfortunately you end up having little discussions like this, and we do have to raise it, which is the, you know, the reparations lot are back at it.
But the thing is, we've had plenty of time to discuss all of this. To bring this out now, just days away from the coronation, when, as you quite rightly say, there's such a wonderful atmosphere out and about in London and in the country, and indeed also in many of the Commonwealth realms, as people get together to celebrate the most important ceremonial and constitutional event. This is a huge distraction. It's worth noting that a majority of British people, according to Lord Ashcroft's recent poll, do not want us to apologise for slavery, and it's important that the King actually hasn't apologised for slavery. He doesn't need to. Prince Albert apologised for slavery back in the 1840s and said it was a crime against humanity. That surely should have been enough. But what we know, of course, is that this isn't about slavery. If this was about slavery, those who make the loudest noise in all of this will be protesting modern slavery around the world.
Yes.
The fact that there are 7 in every 1,000 Africans today is a slave. 10 million people living in bondage. Pakistan, global centre of world slavery. Yet Sadiq Khan wants to build a museum of slavery in this country. Yet when he went on an official visit to Pakistan, land of his father, he didn't once mention it. I think this shows that there's an ulterior motive here. If they really were concerned about slavery, they'd be campaigning against outside the high commissions of Nigeria, the embassy of Niger, Chad, Sudan and Cameroon, and they don't. And that, I think, speaks volumes.
Yeah, absolutely. So much virtue signalling. We just started the hour here, unfortunately, with, in my opinion, a couple of virtue signalling plonkers, but there we go. Let's just bring you some breaking news now. I'm just cutting this through to me right here, so we'll bring you that breaking news. Hopefully in just a second. I believe that I can bring it to you now. There's an incident is there at Buckingham Palace, which is news to me. But anyway, the man, oh, there we go. The man who was arrested outside Buckingham Palace on Tuesday evening has been detained under the Mental Health Act. I'm just going to read that to you one more time. Okay, so this is the breaking news that's just dropping to us here now. The man who was arrested outside Buckingham Palace has been detained under the Mental Health Act, and that is where he is currently remaining. So I believe I've got a bit more info here. The man was held after he allegedly began throwing shotgun cartridges over the walls here at Buckingham Palace behind me, over the palace gates, and he was searched and allegedly found to be in possession of a lock knife, and he was then subsequently arrested on suspicion of possession of an offensive weapon and ammunition. So there we go. That is the breaking news there, just about for you. I'm just going to go back to you, Rafe, if that's all right, and just discuss about what we were talking about a little bit earlier on, because it's important, and I am keen to, whilst we want to raise some of the issues. Look, basically, we've obviously been here for a heck of a long time and will be, so there's a lot of the royal stuff to talk about, and I don't want it to be overshadowed too much by the negativity. But I couldn't help but notice last night Donald Trump, interviewed by Nigel Farage, coming out and basically saying Meghan has behaved incredibly disrespectfully to our royal family, that Joe Biden has essentially behaved disrespectfully. Donald Trump, I think, actually, not for the first time, saying what we're all thinking, which is that Joe Biden probably isn't physically well enough to actually get through that ceremony, although he did manage to totter around Ireland, didn't he, for however long. What do you make of that, what Donald Trump had to say about Meghan Markle, saying she disrespected our Queen?
Well, I think it's quite clear. I think it's disrespectful not only to the Queen, but also to the King. We have to remember that none of her family turned out for her wedding. Her father didn't come, obviously, because he wasn't able to come. And it was the King who stepped in gallantly and led her down the aisle. And you would think it would be a wonderfully magnanimous gesture to reciprocate that kindness and show up. I mean, we know from their tax records of the Archwell Foundation, Harry and Meghan work 1 hour a week. It's not as if they've got their diaries completely overflowing, and yet Prince Harry's only coming for 24 hours. I mean, the idea that he couldn't have found more time to actually come and take part. I think the King wanted him to take part, and I think he would have been the first son of a king not to have attended the coronation in history. So I certainly think it was the right decision, perhaps, for him to come. But I think 24 hours just makes it seem like more of a snub, let alone his carbon footprint coming over in a private jet just for 24 hours from California to here.
Yeah, no, 100%, and that's barely enough time for him to apologise for slavery, is it, really, if he's only here for 24 hours. But there was a Harry and Meghan lookalike. I don't know if you had a chance to see them. They were walking around before and they had fake paparazzi around them, and I thought, Harry and Meghan lookalikes, fake paparazzi, startlingly close to real life, isn't it, I think, that?
Well, I think, that one of the reasons I'm sure they don't want to come over here is because they're scared of the reaction of the crowds. Yeah. So I don't know how those people were received by the public around them, but I think there's a general concern on the part of Meghan that she doesn't want to have choruses of boos echoing wherever she goes.
Yeah, I think they were actually quite brave to walk around, even though they are lookalikes. There's a lot of strong feeling out and about here, really, and I think that is probably quite brave of them to indeed come. Well, look, I'm going to be here camped out. Okay, all right. I am going now to Cameron Walker, who is our royal correspondent, who I believe has more on that breaking news from Buckingham Palace, which is that the man has been detained under the Mental Health Act after an incident on Tuesday evening. Cameron Walker, I believe, joins me now.
Patrick, yes, good afternoon. So, as you said, the man who was arrested outside Buckingham Palace has been detained under the Mental Health Act. He is a 59-year-old man found with a knife. He was not in possession of a firearm, police confirmed. However, they do believe that he threw shotgun cartridges into the grounds. He was arrested on suspicion of possession of an offensive weapon, taken into custody.
It is
detained under the Mental Health Act and taken to hospital. He will remain on bail whilst receiving medical care. The cordons were in place, as we know. He had a bag with him. There was a controlled explosion heard live on GB News, carried out by the police as a precaution, they say. The police also say there were no reported injuries and the incident's not being treated as terror-related, as we already knew. So the new update is the man who was arrested on Tuesday, detained under the Mental Health Act. He has been taken to hospital to receive medical care and he is currently on bail. Patrick.
Cameron, thank you very much. Cameron Walker, there, our royal reporter who's outside Westminster Abbey for us for the latest on that breaking news, following on from that incident on Buckingham Palace, just behind me here, of course, on Tuesday evening. Let's get now, though, to our world exclusive interview with former President Donald Trump, and he's accused Meghan Markle of disrespecting the late Queen. The former US President spoke to Nigel Farage during his visit to Scotland, and he talked about the coronation.
I think it's going to be a great day, and I think that they will do a great job.
Yeah.
And he loves the country. And really, I got to know him quite well, and he loves the country, really loves the country, and he loved his mother. And that's why I thought she was treated so disrespectfully by Meghan, and just no reason to do that. I was actually surprised that Harry was invited, to be honest.
Okay, right, well, I believe we are actually, believe it or not, going back now again to Cameron Walker, our royal correspondent. There we are. He's going to be talking to us a little bit more about this clip. And, Cameron, what kind of reaction do you think that Prince Harry will actually get? Because I've got a feeling that the only reason that he's coming over for such a short period of time is because he doesn't want to seem to be walking out and about too much. Maybe one of the only reasons Meghan Markle isn't coming at all is because she didn't want to get booed. Her ego wouldn't be able to deal with it, Cameron.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of reasons as to why Harry is perhaps only spending a little bit of time here in the United Kingdom. Let's start off with opinion polls, first of all. They remain incredibly unpopular members of the royal family amongst the British public. In fact, Prince Andrew is the only member of the royal family, really, that ranks lower than Harry and Meghan. From my understanding, one of the main reasons why Meghan isn't coming at all is because it's Prince Archie's birthday. It's his 4th birthday on the day of the coronation, and she wants to spend it in private with him. Harry, meanwhile, feels like he should come over perhaps for his father's coronation, but it's very much going to be in a personal capacity as the father of the monarch. He is no longer a working member of the royal family. He stopped being so in 2020, which means he's not going to have an official role on the day. He has not attended any of these rehearsals, which have been taking place this week in Westminster Abbey in the building behind me. He's not expected to appear on the balcony because he's not a working member of the royal family. I suspect it will be a similar situation to the Platinum Jubilee, where he is sat a few rows back, perhaps with his cousins, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie. However, that's not been confirmed. You just see them going in, if you're watching on television just now, them going into that St Paul's Cathedral service, where they were sat a few rows back. But clearly there is this underlying issue here where the British public have some kind of, they're not popular with the British public. So it wouldn't surprise me if that was taken into consideration when they were deciding whether or not to come to London for the coronation. But of course, it's not been confirmed by Buckingham Palace or indeed the team at Archewell, which is Harry and Meghan's charity arm initiative.
Cameron, thank you very much. Cameron Walker, who is our royal correspondent, is outside Westminster Abbey for us. And yes, I do think that I would struggle to hold in the boos if I did see Prince Harry in public. But of course, due to his security, which I hope we're not paying for, that can't possibly happen, can it? Anyway, Charles could see people holding up signs of "Not My King" when he travels down the Mall on Saturday, which I think actually, part of me thinks that they should have these signs ripped out of their petty little hands. But no, the police are not doing that, but they are going to be using facial recognition technology to try to make sure that the area is indeed secure. But is it right that the police are going to allow people to hold these banners up? Do you think that's in good taste? Even though I'm at Buckingham Palace, though, I am covering some of the day's other big news for us, their top stories, and I am asking, should the government have spent so much money helping people escape Sudan when there are many problems right here in the UK? And I am also going to be talking about whether or not we should ban school uniforms, and I'm going to be doing that with Emily Carver, who will be joining us throughout the end of the hour. I'm Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching. Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Dubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views, and often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Saturday nights on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
Saturday nights on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, everybody, to just outside the most famous building in the world, Buckingham Palace, where GB News has had the privilege and the honour of being camped outside for all the last week, and we will, as your coronation station, of course, be leading you all the way through the proceedings. As we get very, very close now to the date, it seemed like a long way off when I first pitched up here on Monday, but we're getting there, aren't we, minute by minute? So anyway, but look, just some other news that's in town. It's not all about the royals, is it? And the government revealed today that 2,450 British nationals were evacuated from Sudan. But did you know that the government isn't actually even obliged to assist dual nationals in another country? And should they have used the money there on some of our problems at home? But it's not just Sudan as well. I don't want to seem like I'm particularly heartless about the people of Sudan and the British nationals over there. Frankly, it's loads of stuff that we spend our money on abroad. Could it not be spent over here? We are either in crisis and skint, or we're not. Which one is it? And some people, especially, dare I say it, those on the left, have to make their mind up. Emma Webb, director of the Common Sense Society, and, of course, a political commentator, joins me now, and a very occasional presenter on GB News as well. I'll give you a cheeky plug there, Emma. So, right, look, what's going on here, then? Are we spending far too much money helping out every Tom, Dick and Harry around the world when we've got people right here who need our support?
I think it was probably right to help dual nationals fleeing Sudan, but as Alison Pearson has pointed out in her Telegraph column, she made the point that that a lot of these people fleeing from Sudan are actually Sudanese. They are dual nationals, but they are Sudanese citizens. So it's not the same as, for example, helping British citizens to flee from Afghanistan, as just to take one example. So I think, we've been spending money on countries like China, countries that have space programs. When we've got our own citizens suffering here, we could be ploughing millions and millions of pounds into dealing with the backlog of cancer patients and saving British lives. So we have so many crises at home that we could be spending our money on, but instead we're spending on foreign aid. Now, the argument for that is usually that it's diplomatically important to spend money on foreign aid, but it's also politically important, never mind ethically important, to spend British taxpayers' money on helping British taxpayers at home. So I think we could be ploughing that money into helping particularly cancer patients, which was Alison Pearson's point. Of course, there's an argument to be made about the inefficiency of the way money is spent in the NHS, but there are lots of better ways that we could be spending British taxpayers' money rather than spending it in other countries that don't necessarily need it.
Emma, I wonder what would be less efficient, giving more money to our NHS or giving it to an African dictator? I mean, the way that both things are run, it does seem absolutely staggering, doesn't it, to me, which one would actually manage to skim more off the top and do whatever with it, but there we go. Emma, can I just ask, we seem to get a lot of criticism for never doing enough abroad with the world's problems. We've always got to be there, haven't we? And then some numpty in the media will pipe up, oh, have you seen what they've done? The Belgians have done well, haven't they? The Belgians have done well. Yeah, okay, all right, fine. But why are we expected to do absolutely everything and be all things to all people?
Guilt, I think, to some degree. We're always very quick to criticise ourselves and very light-handed when it comes to criticising others. The British taxpayer and the British government do a huge amount to help other countries around the world. The amount of money that we spend on foreign aid is eye-watering. I think if people got a breakdown of how much of their taxes personally were being spent on foreign aid, I think they would probably be outraged. Now, there are good arguments, of course, to spend foreign aid, and we should do things to help our neighbours and to be good international neighbours to other countries. But I think that that's fundamentally besides the point, because I think people have a sense of fairness. They feel that they are being failed here at home. There are people who fought in the Second World War who are having to sell their homes in order to pay for their care in old age. I think that the way that we spend money in this country generally is either very inefficient, as you said, or is just simply unfair. So I think that people have a real sort of sense of injustice.
Now, Emma, look, we are, of course, here at Buckingham Palace. Now, I'm putting you on the spot slightly here, but I want to ask you, ahead of the coronation on Saturday, all right, what kind of king do you want Charles to be?
That's not asking me about the royal family is never putting me on the spot, Patrick. I think that it's interesting from a monarchist perspective. I think there's a certain ambivalence about Charles, because I think there are some concerns, at least, that he isn't as traditional and as respectful of the institution of the monarchy as many monarchists are. That said, he did, he has shown himself to be a traditionalist. I would like to see more of that traditionalist Charles coming out rather than the kind of international green politics Charles. I think I'd like to see a little bit more Roger Scruton than Greta Thunberg coming out. But fundamentally, I would just like for him to almost, as Princess Anne said in that fantastic interview that she gave to the Canadian broadcaster, I would like for him to focus on service and upholding the stability and continuity of the monarchy and ensuring its place within our constitutional ecosystem, and to just try a little to sort of keep his nose out of anything that is controversial. And as we know, environmentalism is now a very hot political subject.
Yeah. Well, it is. I mean, absolutely. And the total irony now of this coronation on Saturday potentially being targeted by the eco mob, when the chap who's in that big house behind me there, Buckingham Palace, has probably been as vocal as arguably anyone apart from Greta Thunberg when it comes to the environment, and many people actually think he's maybe gone a bit too far on that, because the environmental issues are now interwoven with the political, aren't they? And that, of course, is an issue when it comes to the royal family. And yeah, if they want to disrupt that, then they'll disrupt anything, but that's because of the kind of people they are, and he just can't win. I think he just can't win. But yeah, Princess Anne has got it absolutely bob on, and I hate to say this, but I did listen to some of Princess Anne's comments, and not for the first time, and thought, you'd make quite a good queen. But there we go. Emma, thank you very much. You'd be a fabulous queen as well, Emma, of course. Emma Webb, Director of Common Sense Society UK and political commentator, and as well occasional GB News host, no less. Right, OK, loads more still to come between now and 6 o'clock as we hurtle towards Tubes & Co. I will ask, should school uniforms actually be scrapped? And I promise that you have to check that out, because it's going to be a very personal debate on this. So I'll leave you wondering why, because myself and someone very close to me have a disagreement of opinion on this. And will people be holding up signs that say "Not my king" outside Buckingham Palace? We are going to go toe-to-toe on this very shortly with Rehabilitating and a Republican as well. I'm going to talk to a man who wants to abolish the monarchy and one man who doesn't. There we go. Patrick Christys here on GB News. Now the headlines with Polly.
Patrick, thanks very much indeed. Our top stories this hour. 4 members of the far-right Proud Boys group, including former leader Enrique Tarrio, have been convicted in the United States for plotting the attack on the Capitol building on January the 6th, 2021. They were found guilty of seditious conspiracy. 5 people, including a police officer, died during or shortly after the riot, and more than 140 police officers were injured. Some breaking news coming to us this hour. A local election vote has been suspended following the death of a candidate. The Conservative councillor Graham Galton was running for Coxford Ward in Southampton. That's in Hampshire in the south of England. All the polling stations in Coxford Ward are now closed, with another election expected to take place within 35 days. We'll keep you up to date on that sad news throughout the rest of today. Now, a man arrested after suspected shotgun cartridges were thrown into the grounds of Buckingham Palace has been detained under the Mental Health Act. The 59-year-old was apprehended on Tuesday evening on suspicion of possessing a knife and ammunition. A controlled explosion was also carried out on his rucksack after he had warned police to handle it carefully. And the Prince and Princess of Wales have been visiting a pub in central London ahead of the coronation. Large crowds turned up to Soho to catch a glimpse of the royal couple visiting the Dog and Duck. They've been in the area to hear how the hospitality industry is preparing for the big event. And to get there, they travelled on the tube, taking the Elizabeth line for the very first time, chatting away to TfL workers about their plans for the busy bank holiday weekend. Those are the latest news headlines. You are up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and on the TuneIn app. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
And a quick snapshot now of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2588 and €1.1421 euros. The price of gold is £1,631 and 79 pence for an ounce. And the FTSE 100 closed at 7,702 points.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News, investments that matter.
Yes, well, King Charles could see protesters holding up signs that read "Not my king" on the route of the royal procession on Saturday. The police have confirmed that they're not going to be taking those signs out of their hands. They're going to be allowing them to do it. Anti-monarchists demonstrated when Charles was in York last month, and police say they will not arrest people holding up placards this weekend, as long as they stay on the right side of the law. They're also deploying facial recognition technology as well. I'm joined now by Graham Smith, who is the Chief Executive of the Republic Campaign Group. I've also, obviously, as you can all see here, got Rehabilitating next to me as well, a royal historian. Look, Graham, thank you very much. To be honest with you, Graham, I'm finding it quite hard to understand why people want to hold signs up that will have absolutely no impact on their cause whatsoever, other than just to try to ruin the days of some very well-meaning individuals. And some people think that makes you horrible people. Your views?
No, I mean, obviously the coronation is something which is a celebration of an institution which we find fundamentally wrong, and therefore we think it's absolutely right and the responsibility of anybody that opposes the monarchy to protest against it. And obviously those signs are having an impact because we are gaining a huge amount of new supporters, new income, new coverage. I mean, we're having all these sorts of interviews. I'm absolutely swamped with requests from TV, radio and press. So it does make a difference. And the message we want to send is very clear. Firstly, we want to say, look, we are not a nation of royalists. Most people are not that interested in the coronation. And secondly, we want to say that it is time for a serious debate, because instead of a coronation, we should have an election, and instead of Charles, we should have a choice. And that's a pretty straightforward message that everybody should understand in a democratic society.
Rafe, what do you make of that? Because I think a lot of people might be thinking, whilst what Graham said there is technically true, it just makes them look a bit sad, really, and joyless and heartless, and maybe quite miserable that they've decided to do that on this particular day.
Well, I'm a staunch believer in the right to peaceful and non-disruptive protest, and so actually, I have no problem with them actually appearing as long as it's peaceful. But I actually feel very sorry for Graham because his Republican movement has been the greatest political failure of modern times, and people will see that on Saturday when they come to London, and there'll be hundreds of thousands of people arriving in the city in joyous, celebratory mood, swirling around this tiny gaggle of Republican anoraks holding up their signs, looking very dull, and you suddenly realise there's absolutely no appetite. If there was, there'd be a far larger turnout. I've been a witness to royal events for 25 years, and there's always a little Republican contingent, and they just look so sad and pathetic. I'm sorry to say. Ipsos Mori for 30 years has asked the British public the same question: do you support the monarchy? And it's been the single most consistent answer of any question they've asked in history. It always varies from between 65 to 75% of the nation. Even at the lowest ebbs of 1992, the Annus Horribilis, it was around in the 90s. It's still at that level. It's been the most stable factor. There is no appetite in this country for republicanism when people know that monarchies are the most stable and egalitarian and democratic countries in the world.
Graham, are you sad and pathetic?
Well, I think both of you are being rather pathetic yourself. I mean, it's not really a serious tone for a serious conversation. So, I mean, if you want to just sit there and call people names, then by all means do that on your own time. But if you want to have a sensible conversation about our democracy, then I'm happy to have that conversation. But, it needs to be about the issue, not about the people. And I think I could very easily call people names, but I don't do that. I think that it's important to engage with the serious questions about our democracy. Now, what was just said about the polling is entirely wrong. The polling has in the past been typically around 75%. One poll put it down as low as 52%, other polls around 55, 56%. It's clearly gone down. Charles's popularity is about 20 points lower than the Queen's was. Some polls put republicanism back up over 30%. And there are huge numbers of people who are simply not interested. Only 9% are enthusiastic about the coronation. And this is an institution that is, quite frankly, corrupt. It's clearly anti-democratic and stands against our best values. And it is bad for our democracy. And, to suggest that monarchies are more stable than other countries simply doesn't stand up to scrutiny. So, have a serious debate about this. That's what we're saying happened. And if you don't want to do that, then by all means, on your own time, call people names. But I don't think that's particularly edifying for your audience.
Well, that's a bit rich coming from Graham, who spent the past 20 years actually being very offensive and rude about monarchy, about those who celebrate monarchical traditions and royalty, and regarding things that we hold very dear as being laughable jokes.
You hold very dear.
But the reality is, if you look around the world, the UN always lists on its Human Development Index the countries with the highest quality of life, and the majority of those are monarchies. The most stable, the most progressive countries are monarchies: Sweden, Norway, Denmark, the Netherlands, Canada, Australia, and Britain. It's a fact. Everyone knows it. Britain has got the world's oldest continuous democracy. I was talking about the principle of monarchy, which you said.
And we're not even in the top 20 of some of them. And the fact that
Graham, I'm speaking about constitutional monarchy.
Because they are stable, still have monarchies, does not mean their monarchies make them stable. That is simply untrue.
Graham. Okay, Graham, he was talking about the principle of monarchy as a whole, I believe.
The principle of monarchy is well established. These are the countries that are the most stable wherever you go in the world, actually. So if you look at the Commonwealth realms, those tend to be the most stable countries in those regions. If you look at North Africa, you look at the Middle East, it's the monarchies which are actually the most stable. Contrast those, for example, to Iran after the Shah's revolution. Look at Iraq. Afghanistan could have been much more secure, we all know, had Zahir Shah been put into place. Monarchies are far more stable. Britain is the world's oldest continuous democracy. And the reason for that...
quite a few of the monarchies around the world outside of Europe are actually dictatorship. The King of Italy sat back and allowed Mussolini to govern for 20 years and was absolutely hopeless at defending democracy. Same with the kings of Greece. Kings and monarchs, the King of Thailand has been a spectacular failure. The King of Cambodia has been a spectacular failure. So, the idea that...
We're talking about constitutional monarchy. The most brutal regimes were republics.
In Europe are monarchies is irrelevant. And it's just... Britain is not in those top 10 categories. They're not even in the top 20 of the political stability index.
Graham, I speak to a lot of people who are on the Mall, and they have a pretty unified message, which is that they respect that you've got a right to voice your opinion, you've got a right to voice your views and hold up signs and things. But the thing that they are most concerned about, okay, is that this is kind of their day, these royal superfans really, and they've been camping out for ages, and then someone like maybe your group turns up and ruins it a little bit. People don't go round to your house on your birthday, do they, and kick your front door in and slag you off?
It's not a private party. It is a £250 million of public money being spent on a lavish celebration of an unelected head of state.
And therefore
all citizens have a right and responsibility to respond to that in any way they want. Now, if some people want to celebrate it, we're not going to get in the way of that. Our protest is going to be good-natured. We're not going to be rude about the people that support the monarchy in the way that you're rude about Republicans. But we are going to be very vocal about our opposition, and this is absolutely the right time to do it.
Rev, do you want to come back to that?
When we put a bid in to get the 2012 Olympics, one of the main points we made was the exposure that the Olympics would give to London and to Britain. We spent £9 billion on that. More eyeballs watched Kate and William's wedding, watched the Platinum Jubilee, and more eyeballs will watch the coronation, and more people will come into London. So for 250 million compared to 9 billion, it's an extremely good investment. The other thing is, republics are very dull. No one will go to. No one's going to go and watch the installation of the president of Germany. No one cares about the installation of the president of other republics around the world, or cares about the birth of the daughter or the granddaughter of a president. The monarchy is a unique thing that sells Britain around the world.
Only 9% of people in this country care about the coronation. The idea that people care about it in China or India or South Africa is nonsense. The idea that it's good for the economy is also nonsense. It's been disproven. Overseas visitors tend to drop in number at these times like this, and it will cost us not just the $250 million, but also the $1 billion off for the public holiday, and it will not bring in extra tourists.
Okay, look, both of you, thank you very much. That is the definition of a debate, and it's lovely to have it. It's Graham Smith there, Chief Executive of the Republic Campaign Group, and Rev Manku as well, Royal Historian and regular on GB News, of course. Right, GB Views at GBNews.uk. I expect they're flooding in after that. Make sure that you get in touch. But yes, moving on. We're just going to have time, a little bit of time, later on in this show now, just about now, yes, there we go. Should school uniforms be scrapped? I think there is a good case to be made for getting rid of them. But I know one person who disagrees with me, and I happen to know her rather well. So I'm Patrick Christys on GB News, and we are Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories. Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Now, some schools are being warned that they'll be on the naughty step if they decide to continue to make parents buy branded items of clothing for their kids, because it can be so expensive, apparently. So, if there's a school football kit, parents should be allowed to just buy the cheapest kit their parents can find, even if it doesn't exactly match the rest of the team, apparently. Sounds sensible? Or does school uniform bring pupils together? Here to talk to me about this now, it's an issue that I imagine is going to affect parents right across the land, is my GB News colleague, is Emily Carver. For the purposes of this discussion, it's possibly worthwhile pointing out that Emily is also my fiancée, and yes, I can't quite believe that either, but there we go. Emily, where do you stand on this idea that school uniform might be banned?
Well, I'm rather concerned to hear that you're anti-school uniform. Do you want kids to just rock up in absolutely anything? I mean, if you look at a local school near where I grew up that didn't have uniform, the absolute state of the kids, they were wearing, you know, tracksuit bottoms, ripped jeans, crop tops, all the piercings, probably a belly button ring. There's no way of knowing whether a kid goes to that school even, unless they have some kind of lanyard around their neck. It creates a sense of unity, diversity, but unity. So everyone is treated the same, they're wearing the same clothes. It's easier for children, gets rid of that competition element. It's easier for parents because they don't have to worry about what their kid's wearing every day. They don't have to spend more money on getting them different items of clothing to wear depending on the fashion, and it's just easier for everyone. And also it brings a sense of pride in your school community. You know, everyone knows you're from the school, I don't know, whatever you want to call the school that you might go to, and you're part of a community, and I think that's nice and sets you up well for life.
I just wonder whether or not it might be better for children to be able to express themselves. I mean, we seem to struggle to create creative geniuses these days, and maybe just strapping them all in the same stuffy school uniform and, you know, having teachers wag their fingers at them for not doing their top button-up and all that. I mean, we are confronted by the bizarre situation, as I was at school, where as an 18-year-old, I could have a teacher who was maybe just a few years older than me, calling me boy and making me do my top button-up. And to be honest with you, Emily, that made me hate school, and look how I turned out.
Well, you probably could have done with a little more of that. Judging by the way you behave, but no, I think that actually it's quite nice for children to have some boundaries, because if they're all in uniform, they are then allowed to express themselves through their learning, through their creativity, and they don't have to worry about their fashion. That just adds another pressure onto children. And also, there are parents who are complaining about the cost of school uniform. That is absolutely fair enough. But you can get cheap clothes at Asda, Tesco, all sorts of different supermarkets. And I think schools should allow parents to just, you know, iron on a badge
so that it looks the same as the official uniform that's always overpriced in the school uniform shops. So I think it's wrong. I think that's quite a hippie argument to say, oh, you can't be creative unless you're wearing, your ripped jeans and your ear piercing. I don't think it's
a hippie argument at all. I'm sorry, I really don't think it's a hippie argument at all. I think the idea is now that we infantilise children so much, you've got to go to school and put your little uniform on, as mummy saying your name in the back of it, and they go to school and they're indoctrinated by a load of woke teachers into all sorts of rubbish tosh, and then they go out and they live their lives, and they're not prepared for the real world. If you go to school, dress yourself in the morning with the clothes that you've gone out and bought yourself, with the Saturday job that you've got, turn up, look presentable, and that prepares you for the real world.
Well, I actually think wearing uniform prepares you for the real world. If you want to go and be a police officer, you have to put a uniform on every day. If you want to be a nurse, you have to put your scrubs on every day. If you want to be a pilot, you have to put your uniform on every day. It's like getting into your, you're getting into your clothes for the day. You're different from when you're at home in your slobby clothes. You're putting on your uniform, ready to learn, ready to, expand your mind without worrying about whether you're wearing the most trendy trainers. I think it's thumbs up for school uniforms. And also, it's good for naughty children too. Because I don't know about you, but where I live, there are often children who are in the school that doesn't have any school uniform, maybe smoking some weed round the back of the school. This way, people can say, oh, I saw those without uniform. They can't tell, which school they're from, so they can't report it to the headmaster and say, you know what?
Oh, I see. So you're the snitch. You're the telltale snitch. I get that. Well, look, I mean, Emily, it's all very well and good having this conversation on national television now. But we both know that I can put up as much of the fight as I want, but we're going to end up doing exactly what you want anyway, as indeed is the right thing to do. Emily, thank you very, very much. That's Emily Carver, there is GB News presenter Emily Carver. Right, OK, ladies and gentlemen, that is just about it for me. It's my penultimate day at the Palace. I'm looking forward to seeing the crowds for one last time tomorrow before we really get on to Coronation Day itself. Michelle Dewberry will be up next with Jubes and Co. I will be back tomorrow at 3 p.m. and I'm going to be asking you throughout the course of tomorrow's show what kind of king you really want Charles to be. So get your thinking caps on and we'll be talking about that tomorrow. Patrick Christys on GB News at the Palace.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope? It's very much so. And the big moral questions of the day. I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News. The